Xiaoxi sat awkwardly in the ultra-luxurious villa, looking completely out of place in her faded, washed-out floral dress. Across from her sat the mother she hadn't seen in 20 years, dripping in gold and silver, clutching Xiaoxi's hands and putting on a tearful, melodramatic performance. You've suffered so much in the countryside. Marrying into the Huo family means you'll finally live a life of comfort. Xiaoxi's heart fiercely twisted. Mom, I am your biological daughter. Are you really going to make me take my sister's place and marry a comatose man who was in a car crash? Zhao Yuzhen cried even harder, acting as if she were the victim. I don't have a choice. Marrying into a new family as a stepmother looks glamorous, but I have so many unspoken hardships. I gave birth to you, didn't I? Just do your mother a favor and take your sister's place. Xiaoxi took a deep breath, the corners of her eyes turning red. Back then, Zhao Yuzhen had ruthlessly abandoned her as an infant to become the Su family's second wife. She treated the Su family's daughter like a precious jewel while ignoring her own flesh and blood. Xiaoxi had mistakenly thought this return to the city was her mother's way of making up for 22 years of neglect. She hadn't expected to be squeezed for her last drop of use. Tears fell heavily onto Xiaoxi's tightly clenched fists. Fine, I'll marry him. Instantly, Zhao Yuzhen broke into a smile, changing her expression faster than flipping the page of a book. Oh, that's wonderful. I knew you were the most obedient. The Huo family has prepared a wedding dress. I'll go get it for you right now. She just wanted to toss this hot potato away as quickly as possible. Out of the corner of her eye, Xiaoxi noticed her stepsister Su Weiwei standing by the staircase. A smug sneer hung on her lips as she soundlessly mouthed, "Motherless, pathetic loser." Su Weiwei then stepped forward, dripping with fake concern to instigate further. Mom, it looks like Xiaoxi isn't too happy about this. Won't your biological daughter feel wrong taking my place? Zhao Yuzhen quickly played along to please her stepdaughter. How could she? This is her blessing. Even if the second young master is in a coma, it's still a wealthy family she could never dream of reaching. She'd never have a life this good back in the country. Xiaoxi's heart turned completely to ice. She finally understood that in her mother's eyes, she wasn't a daughter, just a disposable burden. Just then, a maid hurried in to announce that the Huo family's wedding fleet was waiting at the door. Zhao Yuzhen rushed her. Hurry up, Shishi, don't keep the Huo family waiting. Xiaoxi's hands hung limply by her sides, her fingers tightly clutching a battered old medical kit she had brought from the countryside. Zhao Yuzhen reached out in disgust, trying to snatch it. Don't bring this garbage to the Huo family. You'll make us a laughingstock. Xiaoxi nimbly dodged, causing Zhao Yuzhen to stumble and nearly fall. Xiaoxi stared at her coldly. These are my personal belongings. You have no right to touch them. And this is the last time. She snatched the wedding dress from her mother's hands, her beautiful face freezing with absolute resolve. From now on, I have nothing to do with you. With that, she strode out of the Su family home without looking back. The car sped all the way to the massive Huo estate. Xiaoxi was taken to a dressing room and meticulously styled. Looking at the unfamiliar, exhausted girl in the mirror, she silently cheered herself on. Since I've chosen this path, I'll forget all the pain of the past and treat this as the start of a new life. Dressed in her bridal gown, Xiaoxi looked breathtakingly beautiful, but her smile hid endless bitterness. She was soon led into a spacious bedroom and sat quietly by the bed. A priest stood solemnly, holding a Bible. Today we gather here, witnessed by God and all present, to join Huo Xingzhou and Xiaoxi in holy matrimony. The surrounding relatives immediately began whispering among themselves. It's such a shame about the second young master. He was so capable, the most promising candidate to take over the family. Who knew a car accident a month ago would leave him like this? I heard he even lost his ability to have children, someone chimed in. The second madam must be truly desperate to believe in this superstitious warding off bad luck with wedding nonsense. Looks like the second branch of the family is going to be permanently crushed by the first branch. Xiaoxi peeked at the man on the bed. So this is the second young master, Huo Xingzhou. He was incredibly handsome, striking eyebrows, bright eyes, and a tall, straight nose. With his eyes tightly shut and a pale complexion, he evoked a deep sense of pity. It was a cruel twist of fate that such an outstanding man had been reduced to an unfeeling coma patient. When night fell, Aunt Qian, a servant of the second branch, approached with a loving look. I'll put the veil away for you now. Xiaoxi nodded gently. Thank you, Aunt Qian. Seeing how well-behaved she was, Aunt Qian couldn't help but advise her. Tonight is your wedding night. I know it's asking a lot, but please take good care of the young master. Call me anytime if you need anything. With that, she quietly closed the door and left. Once the footsteps faded, Xiaoxi finally let out a long sigh, her tightly strung nerves relaxing. She looked down at the motionless man and felt a surge of mutual sympathy. Honestly, we've both had it pretty rough. She stood up and gave a massive stretch to ease the backache from sitting all day. Suddenly, her legs gave out from numbness. She lost her balance and crashed forward, landing directly on the man's warm chest. And by some cosmic coincidence, her soft red lips planted squarely onto his cheek. The man beneath her had skin as pale and flawless as jade, his handsome face utterly captivating. However, the bright, vibrant lipstick print now stamped on his cheek instantly ruined his unapproachable ascetic aura. Xiaoxi's face burned with pain and profound embarrassment. Panicking, she tried to push herself up to wipe the lipstick off, but her hair managed to snag tightly on the collar of his silk pajamas. No matter how she pulled, it wouldn't come loose. She gasped in pain, her scalp burning. In her frantic struggle, her red lips continuously brushed against the man's cool, thin lips, kissing him over and over again. If anyone in the Huo family sees this, she thought, they'll poke my spine and call me a shameless woman who wouldn't even spare a comatose man. Looking at the unresponsive man, Xiaoxi put her hands together in a prayer of apology. I'm so sorry, I have no other choice. Desperate, she threw caution to the wind, straddled his waist, grabbed his collar with both hands, and yanked hard. With a crisp rip, the expensive silk shirt tore open, buttons popping and scattering across the floor. Xiaoxi let out a huge sigh of relief. She was finally free. But when she looked down, the man's absolutely perfect physique was completely exposed to the air. His sculpted six-pack abs were enough to make anyone blush and their heart race. She quickly shook her head, scolding herself for having impure thoughts. But what she absolutely did not expect was that the man who had been lying on the sickbed like a corpse would slowly open his deep, chilling eyes. His voice was hoarse, yet laced with bone-piercing coldness. How long do you plan on sitting on me? Xiaoxi was terrified by the ghostly voice, her almond eyes flying open. She instinctively covered her mouth, her heart pounding frantically against her ribs. He's awake! But when she looked closer in sheer terror, the man on the bed still had his eyes tightly shut, his breathing completely flat and unchanging. She let out a long breath, laughing at herself. I must be so exhausted I'm hallucinating. She steadied her nerves, pinched her sleeve, and meticulously wiped every trace of the glaring lipstick from Huo Xingzhou's cheek. Then, moving like a thief in the night, she changed into her pajamas, pulled the covers tightly over the man. With everything done, she carefully lay down on the very edge of the bed. Within minutes, exhausted, she fell into a deep sleep. Little did she know, the moment her breathing leveled out, her rumored comatose husband opened his eyes again, staring at her back with a dark, unfathomable gaze. The next morning, just as golden sunlight spilled across the windowsill, Xiaoxi's sweet dreams were shattered by a commotion. She groggily forced her eyes open to find Aunt Qian standing by the bed, holding a wash basin and giving a stern order. Young madam, please give the young master his sponge bath. Sponge bath? Xiaoxi's brain buzzed, her eyes full of resistance. But Aunt Qian kept a straight face, speaking strictly in a business tone. In the past, the nurses handled it. But now that he has a caring wife, we naturally don't need outsiders interfering. Resigned, Xiaoxi took the towel, wrung it out in warm water, and gently applied it to the man's flawlessly handsome face. Seeing his eyes still tightly shut and his eyelashes completely still, Xiaoxi felt reassured. Last night really was a hallucination. How could a comatose man speak? Aunt Qian stood by like a hawk, supervising as the towel wiped over his brow, lips, and Adam's apple, moving steadily down his chest. Suddenly, as if burned, Xiaoxi yanked her hand back, her face blushing furiously. This is way too invasive, she thought. Just treat him like one of the patients back in the country. Seeing her stall, Aunt Qian prompted, The young master is a neat freak. Please be thorough. After the bath, he needs a full body massage to prevent muscle atrophy. Xiaoxi secretly rejoiced. Thankfully, I got my physical therapy certificate in the past. This is right in my wheelhouse. However, as her fingertips accidentally rested on the man's wrist, a strong, vigorous pulse instantly struck her fingers. She let out a soft gasp. The next second, she held her breath and seriously took his pulse. Seeing her reaction, Aunt Qian leaned in suspiciously. Xiaoxi quickly shook her head to cover it up, though a thin layer of sweat broke out on her back. This pulse is as strong as a dragon. He doesn't seem like a dying man at all. Just then, Aunt Qian handed her another wet towel and added with a deadpan expression, And down there. You haven't wiped down there. Xiaoxi felt the blood rush straight to her head, her ears turning so red they might bleed. Aunt Qian glanced at her calmly. You already have the marriage certificate. You are husband and wife. There's no need to be shy. Gripping the towel, Qiaoxi froze by the bed, a war waging in her head. Her inner demon screamed, "That's a strange man," while her inner angel reasoned, "He is a pitiful patient and your husband." Ultimately, her professional medical ethics won out. Grandpa Cheng had always taught her, a healer must have no desires and view all bodies as wood and stone. Steeling herself, she bit her lip. Holding the towel, she tentatively reached under the sheets, sliding her hand down the tight lines of his abdomen. In that heart-stopping moment, a large, warm hand violently clamped around her wrist with terrifying strength. A weak yet highly embarrassed male voice rang in her ears. "There is no need to wash my lower half." Clang! The wash basin slipped from Aunt Qian's hands and crashed to the floor. The loud noise echoed through the room. Qiaoxi felt like she'd been struck by lightning, frozen like a wooden chicken. Only one thought spiraled madly in her brain. Huo Xingzhou has risen from the dead. Aunt Qian was the first to react. She let out an excited scream and bolted out the door. "Madam, the young master is awake!" Qiaoxi finally snapped back to reality, an overwhelming wave of embarrassment crashing over her. Clutching the wet towel, she stammered in a flustered panic. I was just listening to Aunt Qian and giving you a sponge bath." Huo Xingzhou stared at her, enunciating his accusation word by word. "Last night you kissed me. Many times." The words hit Qiaoxi's heart like a sledgehammer. She was so mortified she wanted to find a hole to crawl into and die. Before long, the bedroom was packed with doctors in white coats. They swiftly surrounded Huo Xingzhou to begin examinations. Irrelevant people were pushed to the doorway, and Qiaoxi went with the flow, leaning against a corner in the hallway and letting out a long breath. Thank God, she thought. At least I don't have to face that terrifying man alone right now. "The madam is here." At the announcement, the crowded hallway automatically parted. An elegant noblewoman dressed in a simple but refined qipao walked gracefully toward them. This was Huo Xingzhou's biological mother, the second madam of the Huo family, Du Huan. Du Huan's appraising gaze landed on Qiaoxi. She asked softly, "You must be Qiaoxi?" Qiaoxi instinctively straightened her back, her palms sweating with nerves. She bowed slightly. "Yes, madam, hello." Internally, her heart was doing flips, wildly guessing if her mother-in-law was here to interrogate her. To her surprise, the second madam suddenly smiled, looking at her with genuine warmth. "Very good." She grabbed Qiaoxi's hand, sighing with emotion. "Xingzhou waking up is all thanks to you." Before Qiaoxi could process this, Du Huan slipped an exquisite, top-tier imperial green jade bracelet off her own wrist and forced it onto Qiaoxi's. Terrified, Qiaoxi tried to pull back. "Madam, this is too precious." But Du Huan gently patted her hand, her eyes full of maternal love. "Good girl, don't refuse it. This is my welcoming gift to my daughter-in-law." Qiaoxi bit her dry lips. After much hesitation, she gathered the courage to confess. "Madam Huo, actually, I'm not the Su family's..." She knew very well she was just a substitute fake, not the Su family heiress they originally wanted. Du Huan sighed lightly, her expression calm. "I know Su Heng sent a substitute to test the waters with our second branch, but a starved camel is still bigger than a horse. Xingzhou holds major projects in his hands. He will make a comeback one day. Regardless, from today on, you are the only daughter-in-law I, Du Huan, recognize. I'll be relying on you to take care of Xingzhou. You're a person who brings good fortune. Let him share in your luck." Seeing the sincerity in Du Huan's eyes, Qiaoxi's eyes grew misty. In her memory, the villagers only ever called her a jinx, bad luck, or the cursed orphan who killed her father and drove away her mother. This was the first time in her life someone praised her for bringing good fortune. That warm feeling of acceptance washed over her entirely. "From now on, call me Mom. His father is busy cleaning up a mess, and his sister is at the temple praying for him. We'll have a proper family dinner another day." Du Huan smiled gently. Qiaoxi nodded eagerly, feeling a sense of belonging she had never known. Just then, the lead doctor stepped out of the room. "Madam, the second young master's cranial nerves are fine, but his legs have multiple bone marrow clots and no sensation. The surgical risk is extremely high." Du Huan's face changed dramatically. "Is there no cure?" The doctor sighed helplessly. "I'm very sorry. Unless you can invite the medical titan, Mr. Cheng Han, he is the only one with successful case histories for this, then go invite him immediately," Du Huan demanded without hesitation. The doctor shook his head. "Mr. Cheng retired and went into seclusion years ago. There's been no news of him. The chances of finding him are slim to none. Listening from the sidelines, Chaoxi's mind started racing. I might actually have a way to cure his legs. Just as she hesitated about whether to speak up, her phone vibrated in her pocket. She glanced at the screen, saw a wildly jumping name, and her heart skipped a beat. She gave Duhuan a quick nod and hurried to a dark corner of the staircase to answer. Her mother, Zhao Yuzhen's seemingly gentle but probing voice came through. Shishi, I heard the second young master woke up. Are his legs really completely useless? A cold laugh echoed in Chaoxi's heart. The doctor had just given the diagnosis, and the Su family had already caught wind of it. Their network was terrifyingly fast. What chilled her to the bone was that her biological mother didn't care if she lived or died in the Huo family, nor did she ask how she survived the terrifying wedding night. She only wanted to extract intel. Her heart went completely cold. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. Wait. Zhao Yuzhen panicked. Help your sister. Huo Xingzhou holds a massive collaborative project with the Qian Yuan group. Just whisper in his ear and get him to sign the project transfer agreement. Then your sister can smoothly marry the first young master of the Huo family. You two will be sisters-in-law. Chaoxi was so furious at this shameless logic, she actually laughed out loud. What makes you think I can help? I'm completely transparent in the Huo family. I have no say whatsoever. I can't do this. Instantly, Zhao Yuzhen ripped off her disguise, her voice turning shrill and piercing. I don't care. Let me tell you the truth. That old woman from the countryside has already been brought to the Su house. If you don't agree, you can forget about ever seeing her again. Chaoxi's voice trembled with extreme fury. Are you even human? That is my grandmother, and your former mother-in-law. Zhao Yuzhen coldly scoffed. Your father died ages ago. That old woman doesn't share half a drop of blood with me. And what about me? Chaoxi demanded, holding back her rage. Am I still your biological daughter? Dead silence fell over the line. Then, Zhao Yuzhen delivered a cold, merciless sentence. Wei Wei is the socialite I raised with great care. Her background and talents are top tier. If you could marry the second young master, she naturally has to marry even better. I'll wait for your good news when you come back for the traditional post-wedding visit. Otherwise, at that old woman's age, who knows what accidents might happen to her. Just as she hung up the phone, Aunt Qian's familiar figure appeared. Young madam, what are you doing hiding over here? Chaoxi's heart jumped. She lowered her eyes to hide her emotions. Nothing. Aunt Qian didn't notice anything amiss. The young master is awake and looking for you. Come back with me quickly. Chaoxi had no choice but to push her heavy thoughts down and follow Aunt Qian back to the room. As soon as she entered, Madame Huo affectionately pulled her to the bedside. This is Chaoxi, the wife who married into the family while you were unconscious. Caught off guard, Chaoxi's gaze crashed into Huo Xingzhou's ice-cold eyes. She instantly recalled the absurdity of last night, her face burning as she awkwardly and ashamedly lowered her head. After last night's ordeal, this man absolutely viewed her as a bold, opportunistic pervert. However, the very next second, the man coldly and decisively spat out 2 words: divorce her. Chaoxi's head snapped up, staring at him in shock and disbelief. Beside her, Duhuan instantly lost control of her emotions, sharply retorting, No! Chaoxi is your lifeline. What if something happens to you after a divorce? Are you still thinking about that little tramp who caused your accident? Mother, even awake, I am a cripple. My legs are paralyzed, and I've lost my inheritance rights. Why drag someone else down? Madame Huo's eyes reddened. Holding back a sob, she comforted him. It will get better. As long as we find Mr. Cheng, with the resources in your hands, we can definitely bounce back. Have you asked this lady here? Huo Xingzhou's gaze locked onto Chaoxi like a vice. Is she willing to live her life as a celibate widow? Chaoxi felt incredibly uncomfortable, her face flushing crimson. The awkward images from last night flashed frantically in her mind again. Does this man really think I'm some sex-crazed maniac? Madame Huo turned to Chaoxi, her face full of guilt. Chaoxi, are you willing to stay by Xingzhou's side? Even though the second branch has lost power, my dowry is enough to keep our family fed and clothed for life. Biting her red lip, Chaoxi fell into a massive internal struggle. Zhao Yuzhen was using her grandmother's life to blackmail her for the massive project in Huo Xingzhou's hands, the only leverage the second branch had to make a comeback. How could she bite the hand that just fed her and extinguish the Huo family's only hope? But if she refused her mother, what would happen to Grandma? Her silence in the eyes of the Huo mother and son was perceived as a silent refusal. The man on the bed seemed to have seen right through it all. Calmly, he pronounced the death sentence on their relationship. "We'll go process the paperwork tomorrow." Startled awake, Chelsea blurted out, "I won't divorce." Since she had already married him, she should share in his honor and disgrace. If even she abandoned him, this man would truly be too pitiful. Braving Huo Xingzhou's murderous, icy glare, she took a deep breath and declared bravely, "I married you, and I accept it, even if it means living as a celibate wife." Madame Huo's suspended heart finally dropped. "Good girl! I knew you were different from the people out there." "Aunt Qian, let's go. Don't delay the young couple from cultivating their feelings." Suddenly, Huo Xingzhou spoke. "Miss Chow, if you want money, I can give it to you. But my mother's dowry was lost in the stock market a long time ago. She lied to you." Chaoxi quickly waved her hands. "I'm not after your money." The memory of last night flashed in Huo Xingzhou's mind again. He warned through gritted teeth, "Now that I'm awake, I will absolutely not tolerate you messing around. Living as a celibate wife means you don't even get to touch a single finger of mine, not even to satisfy your cravings." Chaoxi's face turned into a ripe tomato. She wanted to dig a hole right there and bury herself. Kisses and hugs are satisfying cravings to him? She mumbled a soft rebuttal. "I wasn't. Besides, it's not like you even can." The man's face changed drastically, a dangerous storm brewing in his eyes. "What did you say?" Chaoxi shrank back, terrified, but quickly stated that she was confident she could cure his legs. The man let out a disdainful scoff, pointing at the door, signaling for her to get out. But Chaoxi stubbornly stood her ground. "I'm not lying, I'll prove it to you right now." As soon as she finished speaking, she marched forward, lifted the thin blanket covering him, and without a second of hesitation, pulled down his pajama pants. Instantly, his long, sculpted legs were exposed to the air. Huo Xingzhou was furious. But Chaoxi completely ignored his towering rage, her fingers pressing fast, accurately and ruthlessly onto the acupressure points on his legs. That press was like flipping a switch. The legs that had been utterly devoid of sensation suddenly flared with a dense, tingling numbness, as if millions of ants were biting him. Chaoxi stared at him with intense focus. "Do you feel anything?" Huo Xingzhou turned his head away, maintaining a facade of indifference, but his brows furrowed uncontrollably. Seeing this reaction, Chaoxi knew exactly what it meant. These legs can be saved. Having sensation is a good sign. I swear on my life I can definitely cure your legs. As long as we do daily massages to clear the clots, paired with my exclusive herbal soups, I guarantee you'll be walking again in a month at the earliest, or half a year at the latest. He lifted his eyelids, observing her coldly. "What do you want?" Chaoxi's fingers paused, an embarrassed struggle flashing across her face. She gritted her teeth and confessed, "My grandmother was kidnapped and taken to Sea City by the Su family. They are using her as a bargaining chip to get the collaboration project you have with the Tinyuan group, so that Su Weiwei can have a glamorous marriage to your older cousin." A sarcastic curve instantly appeared on Huo Xingzhou's lips. "Just as I suspected. She's also after the second branch's assets." Catching the mockery in his eyes, Chaoxi felt a chill in her heart, followed by an unspeakable sense of loss. "I'm sorry, I crossed a line." It made sense. Why would Huo Xingzhou agree to give up such a vital resource, let alone to his original fiancé? Huo Xingzhou watched her practically flee from the room, dark emotions churning in his eyes. He grabbed his phone from the nightstand and dialed a number. It was picked up instantly, and a man's casual, teasing voice came through. "Yo, the second young Master Huo finally decided to call me instead of playing a vegetable?" Huo Xingzhou didn't have time to banter. He ordered succinctly, "Compile a top-secret dossier on the Tianyuan Group's collaboration with the Huo Corporation. Remember to tamper with it." On the other end, Zhou Yu dropped his playful tone immediately. "No problem. And just to remind you, your car accident was not simple. But the tracks are completely wiped clean. I can't find evidence. Don't waste effort looking. I know who the mastermind is." "It's not your useless cousin again, is it?" Zhou Yu cursed. "That dog has no skills, only dirty tricks. You're not going to hand this project over to him, are you? Then I definitely need to add some extra traps." Huo Xingzhou cut off his rambling. "Don't worry about all that. Look up someone for me." "Who?" "Chao Shi." Zhou Yu's tone turned slightly suggestive. "Oh, your new good luck bride?" Huo Xingzhou didn't refute the title. "Look into her background. See if she has any connections with the first branch of the family." Meanwhile, back at the house, Zhou Yu was panicking. Every detail in his findings suggested Chaoxi might be a spy planted by the first branch. He practically demanded bodyguards be placed on 24-hour watch. However, Huo Xingzhou had no interest in listening to the noisy nonsense and hung up the phone. His half-lowered eyes revealed a deep, unreadable darkness. After all, there was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. The image of his stubborn, bright new bride involuntarily surfaced in his mind. Ironically, right when his legs gave out, the Su family sent this bride who confidently claimed she could cure him. And what was even more interesting was her face. On the other side of town, Du Huan realized Chaoxi had arrived with very little luggage. Without a second word, she enthusiastically dragged Chaoxi to the mall, intent on outfitting her from head to toe. The moment they stepped inside, the wealthy Madame Huo activated her ultimate shopping mode, pointing at extravagant garments and practically wanting to buy one in every color. Chaoxi's heart jumped as she secretly peeked at the price tag on one item. The bold $19,999 almost made her suffocate. That was more money than she could spend in half a year in the countryside. If she bought this, her meager savings wouldn't even cover the tax. Terrified, she waved her hands in refusal. But Du Huan simply pressed her hand down, speaking earnestly. A girl should be refined. Since you are my daughter-in-law, you are half my daughter. Between mother and daughter, there's no need to be so distant. At those words, a glimmer of genuine emotion welled up in Chaoxi's eyes. So this was what family care felt like. It was incredibly comforting. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law duo swept through the clothing boutiques before moving on to the jewelry stores. However, someone completely devoid of social grace had to insert themselves into the picture. A wealthy woman dripping in jewels approached them with a snide, mocking laugh, ridiculing the second Madame Huo for having the leisure to shop. Her tone was completely filled with schadenfreude, stating that even though Huo Xingzhou was awake, he was still a cripple, and the Huo family inheritance would sooner or later fall to the first branch. Chaoxi originally thought that people in high society circles would possess at least a little class. She hadn't expected them to be even more snobbish than the town gossips back home. Watching this woman kick Huo Xingzhou while he was down ignited a fire in her. She stepped squarely in front of Du Huan, replying with neither humbleness nor arrogance. In life, you should leave a little room for grace. Huo Xingzhou is recovering. Once he takes back power, it's hard to say whether he might take special care of Madame's family business. Du Huan's eyes crinkled with joy. She silently cheered for Chaoxi, truly the daughter-in-law I handpicked. Mrs. Sun choked, her face turning bright red. Out of sheer humiliation and anger, she viciously cursed. Even if Huo Xingzhou stands up, he can't have kids. Your massive family empire will have no heir. Hearing this, Du Huan let out a cold laugh and ruthlessly ripped Mrs. Sun's own secrets open. I hear your son is the one who's truly useless. Word is, he lacks stamina in certain areas and pops random pills. Just a couple days ago, he had to be carried into the hospital. Be careful he doesn't actually die in some woman's bed one day. Furious and frantic, Mrs. Sun tried to fire back, dropping a threat that her family would sooner or later find the legendary Mr. Cheng Han and that the Huo family shouldn't even think about begging for his help. Du Huan, looking entirely unfazed, replied calmly that her Xingzhou was a blessed man and perhaps the divine doctor would come looking for him instead. After this verbal sparring, Madame Huo emerged victorious. Mrs. Sun's face shifted through shades of blue and white. Ultimately, she could only use the real estate land her family held as leverage, dropping a harsh warning to see how Huo Xingzhou would resolve his project crisis before storming off with her handbag. Chaoxi secretly marveled. She hadn't expected the seemingly elegant second madam to possess such explosive combat power in an argument. In the blink of an eye, Du Huan adjusted her mood, pointing to a unique blue sapphire necklace in a top-tier glass display case and asking the clerk to take it out. Before Chaoxi could register what was happening, the teardrop sapphire pendant was already fastened around her neck. Under the brilliant lights, it complemented her snow-white skin, making her look as if she were bathed in a soft glow. Madame Huo looked at her with utter amazement and took the opportunity to correct Chaoxi's address again, asking her to call her Mom. Chaoxi reached up to take off the expensive gift, but Madame Huo stopped her, claiming she was merely holding it for Huo Xingzhou, and that once his legs were cured, the young couple could do whatever they wanted with it. With no other option, Chaoxi nodded in agreement, and Du Huan immediately had the clerk pack it up. At that moment, a thought struck Chaoxi. She took the chance to ask about this mysterious Mr. Cheng Han. Who exactly was he? And why did it feel like all the powerful people in Sea City were scouring the world for him? Du Huan's expression grew solemn. When speaking the name Chung Han, her eyes were filled with reverence. He is a titan in the medical field. His acupressure massage techniques are famously known for bringing the dying back to life. No matter how complicated the illness, a cure is guaranteed in his hands. However, he vanished from the public eye at 60. The world knows he retired but doesn't know where. Rumor has it he left a single disciple in this world. Since we can't find the master, finding the disciple would be a massive stroke of luck. Xiaoxi nodded thoughtfully. The image of her rural neighbor, Grandpa Chung, instantly flashed in her mind. Back then, when the meridians in her own legs were blocked, it was the massage techniques she learned from him that cured her. But on second thought, she figured she was just being overly imaginative. Aside from sharing the surname Chung, her Grandpa Chung didn't look like a VIP at all. How could a legendary doctor hole up in such an impoverished, remote village? Just then, the sharp ring of a cell phone broke the silence. Du Huan answered, and whatever the person on the other end said turned her rosy complexion ashen. Gritting her teeth, she roared into the receiver, "Tell that bastard to wait right there." She frantically ordered the driver to rush back. The car tore down the road, speeding back to the villa. As soon as they entered, Aunt Qian ran up in a panic. The first young master brought a doctor and forced his way into the second young master's room. He didn't even explain, he just drew a massive tube of blood. Hearing this, Du Huan felt her heart violently clench. Forgetting her image, she clutched her chest and sprinted toward the stairs. But haste makes waste. Her high heel twisted sharply, and she nearly tumbled down. Xiaoxi, quick on her feet, caught her just in time. Ignoring the agonizing pain in her ankle, Du Huan thanked her and continued limping forward. Just as they reached the hallway, the master bedroom door opened from the inside. A young man wearing gold-rimmed glasses stood there, dressed in high-end couture that couldn't mask his aura of an educated scumbag. The mocking curve of his lips was glaringly offensive. His cold, malicious gaze brazenly raked over Xiaoxi. He let out a scoff, mockingly calling out, "Auntie, so this is the country bumpkin you brought in to ward off bad luck?" Facing this onslaught of venom, Xiaoxi retorted evenly, "Mr. Huo, you should worry about your own backyard first." At the same time, Du Huan suppressed her rage and coldly demanded what Huo Beiting was trying to accomplish. Huo Beiting deliberately raised his smug voice, wanting the whole world to hear. Chin tilted up, wearing the arrogant expression of a petty tyrant, he declared that he was under the family patriarch's orders to bring a doctor to give Xingzhou a medical checkup. He even turned the tables, asking if his aunt had misunderstood something. Suppressing the boiling anger in her chest, Du Huan issued an ice-cold eviction order. But Huo Beiting completely ignored the warning, sarcastically telling his aunt to watch her attitude. Then he dropped a bombshell. The first branch possessed far more leads on the divine Dr. Chung Han than the second branch. Seeing Du Huan's face turn deathly pale, he finally nodded in satisfaction. The smug smile on his face widened infinitely as he turned and strode away. In that moment, he felt on top of the world. The dark cloud of being entirely overshadowed by Huo Xingzhou for years was finally swept away. In his eyes, a cripple could never inherit the Huo family. Huo Xingzhou was no longer a threat. Du Huan bit her bloodless lips, watching the arrogant figure disappear. Just as she tried to move, a piercing pain shot through her ankle. Xiaoxi swiftly stepped in, carefully supporting her to sit down in the hallway. Xiaoxi's slender, nimble fingers skillfully massaged Du Huan's ankle. She softly reassured her that the bone wasn't damaged. With a subtle application of force, she gave the ankle a few light twists. The next second, Du Huan was amazed to find she could plant her feet firmly on the ground. The pain was gone. Tears welled in Du Huan's eyes. She stared at the closed bedroom door for a moment, then gripped Xiaoxi's hands tightly. With the most desperate plea a mother could muster, she begged, "Please, Xiaoxi, go in and take care of Xingzhou." Xiaoxi, bright and perceptive, instantly understood the plea in Du Huan's eyes. She nodded solemnly. After Aunt Qian helped Du Huan away, Xiaoxi gently turned the doorknob. The moment the door opened, a scene of utter chaos met her eyes. The man leaned against the edge of the bed, his profile as noble and flawless as ever, like a deity fallen to earth. But his clothes were disheveled, and the splatters of blood were shocking to see. Xiaoxi explained that her mother-in-law had sent her to clean up as she bent down to pick up the shattered pieces on the floor. Hearing the noise, Huo Xingzhou slowly turned his head. In truth, this mess was deliberately created by him to trick Huo Beiting. If he didn't put on a convincing show of a mental breakdown, who would believe he was truly defeated? His voice was terrifyingly cold as he demanded, "Are you here to clean the room or to clean me?" Xiaoxi looked up abruptly, her eyes full of shock. Huo Xingzhou offered no explanation, coldly tossing out a single command: "Change my clothes." Not daring to delay, Xiaoxi hurried to the walk-in closet and retrieved a set of loungewear. Huo Xingzhou gave a curt nod and unapologetically spread his arms wide. A blush instantly spread across Xiaoxi's cheeks. After a moment of hesitation, she reached out with trembling fingers and unbuttoned his shirt. As the top slid off, his pale torso, lined with lean muscle, was entirely exposed. The sight made her dizzy and her heart race wildly. She desperately tried to brainwash herself to stay calm. "It's not the first time I've seen it," she reminded herself. Pretending to be composed, she helped him into the fresh shirt. But as she held his pants, her eyes inevitably betrayed a hint of hesitation. Huo Xingzhou stared at her with a half-smile, mocking her mercilessly. "Stop playing innocent. You were fierce enough when you ripped my pants off before." Xiaoxi froze, thinking to herself, "It's just changing a pair of pants. It's no big deal." Huo Xingzhou leaned against the bed, portraying the image of a completely defeated, broken man. Xiaoxi's cool, soft fingertips accidentally brushed against his skin, eliciting a subtle shiver from him. She then wrung out a towel and gently wiped the blood streaks from his arm. The area around the needle puncture was bruised purple, clearly the result of a malicious, excessive blood draw. Suddenly, Huo Xingzhou's dark gaze locked onto her profile. In a flash, he executed a rapid grappling maneuver, securely pinning her wrist. The world spun, and Xiaoxi was thrown heavily onto the wide mattress. Before she could react, the heavy weight of the man's upper body pressed down on her. He interrogated her. "What benefits did Huo Beiting promise you?" Her heart constricting, Xiaoxi frantically denied it, insisting she didn't even know Huo Beiting. It turned out he had never trusted her. The earlier moments of warmth were nothing but a game. By now, his right hand had slid down to rest on her soft waist. His cold voice carried a hint of rogue-like temper. "Since you've stripped me twice, it's only fair I strip you once." Xiaoxi's chest heaved with fury, feeling deeply violated. She bit her lower lip hard, her mind screaming internally. What does this man take me for? A toy to be tossed around? Blinded by anger, her fingers suddenly snapped into action. With precise and brutal force, she dug into a pressure point on his shoulder and neck. Huo Xingzhou felt a sudden wave of numbness shoot down his entire arm. His strength vanished, and his grip involuntarily loosened. Moving with astonishing speed, Xiaoxi used the brief opening to scramble off the bed. Frantically pulling her severely disheveled clothes tightly around herself, all her grievances poured out. "Even if you stripped me completely, you don't even have the stamina to do anything." Without daring to look at the man's reaction, she yanked the door open and bolted. Just then, from the shadows of the hallway corner, two figures slowly crept out. "Tsk, look, the buttons on her shirt are popped," one whispered. The other woman instantly caught on. "Her hair is a mess and her face is so red. Do you think the young master totally mesmerized her?" Aunt Qian smiled like a proud matchmaker, giving a thumbs up. "The madam's flesh and blood strategy is brilliant. Sending the young madam in to take care of him up close? Isn't that just dry wood meeting a sparking fire?" A glint of shrewdness flashed in Du Huan's eyes. "This is nothing. I know my son. He wouldn't let himself suffer in front of Huo Beiting unless he did it on purpose." Huo Xingzhou sat alone on the bed, rubbing his fingertips together, seemingly still savoring the sensation. Her skin had been as soft and delicate as cotton candy, causing him to momentarily lose focus. Suddenly, he looked down and scoffed, an inexplicable surge of annoyance rising in his chest. What does she mean I don't have the stamina? If he had actually intended to make a real move, a little woman with her strength would never have escaped unscathed. Just then, his phone buzzed on the nightstand, pulling him back to reality. It was Zhou Yu. Working with lightning speed, he had already compiled a meticulous, incredibly detailed report on Xiaoxi's life from childhood to adulthood. Huo Xingzhou casually swiped open the dossier. The moment his eyes scanned the text, his fingers froze. The usual coldness in his eyes fractured, replaced by sheer shock and disbelief. In the blink of an eye, the 3-day post-wedding visit period arrived. The second madam, Du Huan, prepared generous gifts but held Xiaoxi's hand tightly, her face full of guilt as she comforted her. "Because Xingzhou is still unwell, I'm sorry to make you go back alone." Xiaoxi nodded obediently, but from the corner of her eye she couldn't help but glance toward the second floor of the small villa. Recalling their unpleasant parting yesterday, a bitter taste rose in her mouth. "Since I failed to get the project transfer documents from him, I have to force my way in to save Grandma myself." After saying her goodbyes, the luxury car slowly pulled away from the Huo estate. When they arrived at the Su family villa, Xiaoxi stepped out and stared at the familiar yet alien facade, two flames of absolute resolve burning in her eyes. She swore to herself that today, regardless of the cost, even if it meant tearing the Su family apart, she would drag her grandmother out of that hell. With heavy steps, Xiaoxi entered the living room. The room, previously filled with laughter, fell deathly silent. Seeing her, Zhao Yuzhen immediately plastered on a fake, enthusiastic smile and hurried over, asking why the second young master hadn't accompanied her. On the couch, Su Weiwei tilted her chin up, her eyes full of disdain. She mercilessly mocked, "Does a country bumpkin really think she's worthy of having Huo Xingzhou escort her? Embarrassing." Seeing this, Su Heng quickly played the peacemaker. He gestured for Xiaoxi to sit and drink tea while spouting grandiose lectures about family unity in an attempt to paper over the cracks. Zhao Yuzhen smoothly took the cue. While her mouth spoke of them being like real sisters, her eyes gleamed with calculation as she eagerly probed for the whereabouts of the legendary Dr. Cheng Han from the Huo family's side. Having been married into the Su family for years without bearing a son, she desperately coveted the rumored fertility prescriptions. Xiaoxi sneered internally. These people only wore their human skin when there was profit to be made. Their true faces made her sick. Without even lifting her eyelids, she shot back, "Are you sick in the head?" Consumed by rage, she raised her hand and delivered a vicious slap across Xiaoxi's face, shrilly cursing her daughter's lack of upbringing. A red welt instantly bloomed on Xiaoxi's pale cheek. She covered her face, the last shred of hope in her heart freezing over completely. So this is the so-called birth mother. Seeing this, Su Weiwei's arrogance swelled. Pointing at Xiaoxi's nose, she yelled, "If the soft way won't work, we'll do it the hard way." She urged her father to stop wasting time and forced Xiaoxi to hand over the project documents. Swallowing her anger, Xiaoxi declared that she wouldn't hand over anything until she saw her grandmother. Assuming Xiaoxi was bluffing, Su Weiwei cursed and lunged forward to search her. But as soon as she reached out, she grabbed nothing but air. Humiliated and furious, she lunged again. This time, Xiaoxi didn't hold back. With a swift backhand, she precisely pinned Su Weiwei's arm, warning her coldly that grabbing someone wasn't that easy. With a scream of agony, Su Weiwei was forced down, the pain making her entirely immobile. Zhao Yuzhen was terrified, her face losing all color as she shrieked for Xiaoxi to let go. Xiaoxi's beautiful face was set in ice, repeating only one demand, "I want to see Grandma." Just then, the sound of chaotic footsteps came from the stairs, accompanied by a familiar, weak cry. "Nan Nan!" Xiaoxi turned toward the voice. Her grandmother looked ashen and severely emaciated. Xiaoxi's eyes instantly welled with tears. Right at that moment, Zhao Yuzhen violently yanked the old woman's arm, viciously cursing the old thing for running around. Grandma Qiao completely ignored her own suffering, her eyes filled with heartache as she tried to comfort her granddaughter. Turning to Zhao Yuzhen, she begged bitterly, asking her to look at their shared flesh and blood and stop torturing this poor child. Yet there was not a trace of humanity on Zhao Yuzhen's face. Instead, her fingers clamped down ruthlessly, digging into the old lady's frail arm. She issued a sinister threat. Unless they got what they wanted, they would never let this go. Seeing her grandmother in pain, Xiaoxi was burning with anxiety. She fiercely gripped Su Weiwei's throat, screaming for them to let her grandmother go. Su Weiwei was terrified out of her wits, screaming wildly for her mother to save her, looking entirely pathetic. However, Su Heng, who had been watching from the sidelines, finally stood up. With a look of utter disgust, he mocked Xiaoxi, telling her she was too green to play ruthless. Then, in an act of total inhumanity, he grabbed the old woman by the hair and slammed her head brutally against the wall. Without even a groan, she collapsed to the floor. Xiaoxi's heart felt as if it were being ripped in two. She released Su Weiwei and let out a blood-curdling scream. "No!" Su Heng smoothly blocked her path, looking down at her from his high horse. He warned her not to play tricks, boasting that his years in the cutthroat business world meant he was no pushover. After all, to ensure Su Weiwei could successfully climb the social ladder and marry Huo Beiting, he was absolutely determined to obliterate any stumbling blocks. Just then, a servant rushed in a panic, announcing that the second young master of the Huo family had arrived. Hearing this, Su Heng looked completely dismissive. He sneered, stating that his arrival wouldn't change a thing. In his eyes, Huo Xingzhou was just a paralyzed piece of garbage about to be discarded by his family. He couldn't make waves. "Oh, is that so?" Before the words fully landed, A highly trained squad of men in black suits flooded the living room like a dark storm cloud, completely surrounding them. The deadly aura they exuded was terrifying. At that moment, the man in the wheelchair slowly emerged. He radiated a natural, undeniable arrogance and wildness. His icy gaze shot straight at Su Heng, demanding to know since when outsiders had the right to dictate Huo family business. Looking at the men crowding his home, a wave of inexplicable panic washed over Su Heng. However, Huo Xingzhou's eyes swept coldly across the room, finally locking onto the pitiful little woman. When she was ripping my pants off, she was so fierce, he thought. How was she letting this pack of lowlifes bully her? His voice dropped to a terrifyingly low pitch. I am here to take my wife home. Does anyone have a problem with that? Xiaoxi snapped her head up. The moment her eyes met his, the tears in her eyes finally spilled over. Watching from the side, Su Weiwei was completely dazed. He's so handsome. This man was supposed to be mine. Instantly, the bodyguards Huo Xingzhou surged forward, ruthlessly shoving Su Heng into a corner while incredibly gently helping the old woman off the floor. With red-rimmed eyes, Xiaoxi choked out, "They beat my grandma. She has to go to the hospital immediately." Before Huo Xingzhou could respond, she carefully supported the old lady and led the way out. The bodyguards pushed Huo Xingzhou's wheelchair, following closely behind. As they passed the Su family, Huo Xingzhou suddenly stopped and looked back. Su Heng, I haven't been removed from the Huo family yet. It is not your turn to act wildly. Su Heng trembled under that glare, but could only watch helplessly as they left. He wanted to see just how long this second branch of the Huo family could keep up their arrogance. After leaving the Su residence, the highly trained bodyguards filed out and orderly boarded a massive bus parked on the street. Xiaoxi helped her grandmother into the car but couldn't help looking back, her eyes full of confusion. She couldn't figure it out. The second branch was supposed to be in a dire situation. Where did they get the money to hire so many highly trained bodyguards, let alone a dedicated bus? Was this the trump card that allowed Huo Xingzhou to act so boldly? She hesitated for a moment, opening her mouth to ask. To her utter shock, Huo Xingzhou casually tossed out an answer that nearly made her jaw drop. They're actors hired from the film studio. Xiaoxi's eyes went wide. She barely managed to squeeze out the word, actors? The man lazily lifted his gaze. This is called maximizing small investments. In war, there is no deception too great. Xiaoxi suddenly understood. Hiring a few extras to put on a show barely cost anything. The project in his hands was his real bargaining chip. Having figured it out, she softly said, "Thank you." Hearing her gratitude, the gloomy frustration that had built up in his chest inexplicably dissipated. The car arrived at the hospital, and Xiaoxi busied herself handling the admission procedures. In the hospital bed, the old woman gently tugged at Xiaoxi's sleeve. Nan, I don't want to be hospitalized. Don't worry about me. I'll just go back to the country." Looking at her grandmother's weathered face, Xiaoxi's heart ached. "No, Grandma, you have to listen. The doctor says your illness can be cured." With that, she turned to go pay the medical bills. Grandma Chow turned to the man in the wheelchair, her face full of gratitude. "Young Master Huo, thank you so much for the trouble today." Huo Xingzhou nodded politely. She did marry me, after all. The old lady wiped a tear from the corner of her eye and sighed slowly. This child has had a bitter life. Her father died early and her birth mother abandoned her for wealth. She relied on a kind-hearted sponsor to finish her schooling. She is too sensible, too well-behaved. As Huo Xingzhou listened to the old woman chatter, his mind was entirely occupied by the memory of Xiaoxi boldly kissing and groping him. He really couldn't associate that daring woman with the word well-behaved. Grandma continued, "She's straightforward and would rather break than bend. She doesn't know how to flatter people, and she responds to softness, not force. But if someone gives her 1 ounce of kindness, she wants to repay them tenfold." Young Master Huo, could I ask you to protect her a little more in the future? Huo Xingzhou's heart stirred slightly. Inexplicably, he softly agreed. The cold, lifeless facts on that investigation report suddenly became vivid and real through the old woman's words. He felt like he was finally beginning to truly understand this girl. After spending most of the day at the hospital with the old woman, it was evening by the time Xiaoxi and Huo Xingzhou finally left. The man's deep voice suddenly broke the silence in the car. "Does what you said before still count?" Deep within his dark eyes, a faint, almost imperceptible trace of anticipation bloomed. "Cure my legs!" Hearing this, Xiaoxi excitedly raised her hand as if swearing an oath. I promise, I guarantee I will cure your legs. Casually, he asked, "Who did you learn from?" Even though he had a good guess, he wanted to hear her confirm it. Xiaoxi grabbed the edge of her shirt, looking a bit embarrassed. "I learned from my neighbor, Grandpa Cheng. Even though he isn't as famous as the great Mr. Cheng Han, he taught me with a lot of care. He cured everyone in our village, just as he suspected." This silly girl had absolutely no idea she was mentored by such an incredible master, nor did she know Cheng Han had changed his name and gone into hiding in the countryside. "I believe you," Huo Xingzhou said. "Your grandmother's condition is complicated. I found a long-term care worker to stay with her. You can go to the hospital to visit her anytime. The medical bills will be deducted from your consultation fees." Xiaoxi's clear eyes instantly filled with pure joy. "Mr. Huo, I'm truly grateful. Thank you for believing in my medical skills." Seeing her looking so foolishly happy, Huo Xingzhou spoke with profound meaning. "Xiaoxi, one day they will all have to beg you." Xiaoxi listened, completely lost in the subtext. Though she didn't quite grasp his deeper meaning, she only felt that the man's voice was like moonlight rippling across a spring lake, slowly warming her anxious heart. Then, Huo Xingzhou's long fingers pulled out a thin document and handed it over. Xiaoxi instinctively looked down. The bold black text reading, "Marriage Agreement," was glaringly obvious. She read closer and saw it was spelled out in black and white. The day his legs fully recovered would be the day they went their separate ways. The maximum duration was set at 3 months. Meanwhile, as a reward, he would gift her a property and a blank check worth millions. "If you have no objections, sign it. I don't like owing favors. Consider this a non-disclosure agreement as well." But without a second thought, Xiaoxi merely glanced at it and immediately signed her name. She looked up, her beautiful almond eyes curving into crescent moons, her face completely sincere. "Mr. Huo, here's to a happy collaboration." Her smile was incredibly radiant. A flash of surprise crossed Huo Xingzhou's eyes, and the corners of his mouth uncontrollably curled upwards. His heart, which had been dead for so long, felt as if it had been quietly swept by a soft feather, instantly rippling with an unfamiliar sensation. This agreement gave her the right to choose, yes, but he also realized he enjoyed giving it to her. As Xiaoxi and Huo Xingzhou stepped through their front door, Aunt Qian hurried over with a beaming smile, announcing that young Master Zhou had been waiting for quite some time. Before she could finish, Zhou Yu, always eager for attention, strode out from the living room. His eyes glued straight to Xiaoxi. "Wow, this must be my sister-in-law!" Who would have thought this was the woman who made Huo Xingzhou mobilize his private forces to play extras in a hero saves the beauty stunt? Out of basic courtesy, Huo Xingzhou turned to Xiaoxi and introduced him. "This is Zhou Yu. He belongs to the category of completely irrelevant people you wouldn't be able to pick out of a crowd. You don't need to be polite to him." Watching the two bicker, Xiaoxi smiled, waved her hand, and excused herself to go back to her room to prepare. Watching her slender figure disappear up the stairs, Zhou Yu instantly changed his tune. He leaned in close to Huo Xingzhou, lowering his voice to ask, "Is she really the closed-door disciple of the divine Dr. Cheng Han? Good lord, the Huo family basically just installed a cheat code." Then, as if discovering a new continent, he mused, "You know, she actually looks a bit like Shui." Before that name could even jump out of his mouth, Huo Xingzhou's face turned as cold as ice. His voice dropped to a gravelly, dangerous pitch as he spat out a warning. Meanwhile, over at the Su family villa, an all-out martial arts sequence was basically taking place. Su Weiwei was so furious, her internal organs felt like they were on fire. With a violent swipe, she knocked all the bottles and jars off her vanity. Panting heavily, she cursed, demanding to know why Xiaoxi got to marry a man as handsome as Huo Xingzhou. Her heart was consumed by jealousy, yet she desperately tried to brainwash herself, repeating that Huo Xingzhou was just a cripple in a wheelchair, and that Huo Beiting was her only stepping stone to the top of high society. Just then, her phone vibrated, shattering the dead silence. Seeing the name on the screen, Su Weiwei quickly answered, crying and complaining about how Huo Xingzhou had bullied them. But Huo Beiting, on the other end, wasn't buying it. His tone was freezing cold as he cut straight to the chase, demanding to know if she had secured the document. He even dropped a harsh threat. If the Su family couldn't produce the bargaining chip he wanted, the engagement was off. Su Weiwei froze, her mind going blank. She quickly brought up the fact that she had forced Xiaoxi to be the substitute bride, hoping to claim credit. But Huo Beiting was ready to hang up. A flash of absolute malice crossed Su Weiwei's eyes. She quickly called out to him, claiming she had an idea that would make Huo Xingzhou drop to his knees and beg. Not only would she make him hand over the project transfer agreement, but she would also completely humiliate him. Her venomous plan turned Huo Beiting's mood from cloudy to sunny, and he actually praised her for being sufficiently ruthless. Early the next morning, the driver was already waiting at the door. When Xiaoxi appeared, he quickly opened the car door. The moment Xiaoxi stepped in, her eyes met a pair of deep, pool-like eyes. Huo Xingzhou was leaning lazily back in his seat. Her heart skipped a beat as she wondered if this VIP remembered her offhand comment from the morning. Huo Xingzhou slowly lifted his eyelids and stated flatly, "I'm coming with you." Xiaoxi's heart skipped another beat. She politely agreed. That strange, unfamiliar feeling of being valued silently took root in her heart. The car soon parked smoothly in front of a traditional Chinese medicine pharmacy. Xiaoxi glanced down at his legs, softly instructing him to wait in the car. Huo Xingzhou agreed quietly, telling her to call him immediately if she ran into any trouble. Just as Xiaoxi was picking up her bundled herbs, a piercing scream erupted from the inner hall. Someone shouted that a man had passed out cold. Xiaoxi's eyes sharpened. She instantly pushed through the crowd, shouting, "Make way, I'm a doctor!" On the floor lay a pale, deathly-looking young man. Xiaoxi quickly knelt down, instructing the crowd to give them space while accurately pressing down on his pressure points. A loud, obnoxious middle-aged man in the crowd started mocking her, questioning if this little girl was just putting on an act. But the very next second, a miracle occurred. The man who had his eyes squeezed shut groggily woke up. The noisy pharmacy fell dead silent, followed by gasps of amazement. The man opened his eyes to see a breathtakingly beautiful, unadorned face. Stunned, he was about to speak when Xiaoxi calmly pointed out his diagnosis. "You are suffering from severe exhaustion and a lack of vitality. Your body is incredibly weak. I suggest you make time for a full-body checkup at the hospital. I wish you a speedy recovery. I'll be taking my leave now." Xiaoxi delivered the flat advice and got up to leave. And right then, a burly guy in the crowd, clearly loving the drama, roared with laughter. "Young man, the lady is politely telling you that you lack stamina. Take it from me, you've got to pace yourself. If you overdraw the account, it stops working." Soon Weimeng's face turned the color of pig liver. But the next second, a frantic, overdressed wealthy woman pushed through the crowd. "Weimeng, my precious boy!" she shrieked. Meaningful, judging looks stabbed into the man like daggers. Mrs. Sun squatted down, heartbroken, and started nagging nonstop. "I told you not to eat those shady pills, but you never listen. Now look what happened." Sun Weimeng was so embarrassed his toes curled. He covered his face with his hands, his voice squeezing out through his fingers. "Mom, please, I'm begging you, stop shouting my name in the middle of the street." Mrs. Sun finally snapped out of it and anxiously asked where the savior was, declaring that the Sun family would offer a massive cash reward. Sun Weimeng pointed toward the street outside. Mrs. Sun followed his gaze and froze entirely. The person who had just saved her son's life was none other than the new daughter-in-law of the Huo family. This was completely beyond her expectations. Xiaoxi, entirely oblivious to the stairs behind her, carried her heavy bags of herbs and quickly climbed into the car. Huo Xingzhou's deep eyes examined her. He casually asked why she took so long. Xiaoxi downplayed it, mentioning there was a small incident but it had been handled. Seeing she didn't want to elaborate, Huo Xingzhou didn't press. Instead, he changed the subject. "The house just called. My father and sister have returned." A flash of nervousness appeared in her eyes as she asked quietly if she needed to prepare emergency welcome gifts. Huo Xingzhou's lips curled into an amused smile. "That's completely unnecessary. They should be the ones preparing gifts for you." The moment Xiaoxi stepped into the house, a bright, lively figure crashed into her view. The girl ran over like a whirlwind and loudly announced, "Sister-in-law, I'm Zhao Zhao!" Looking at this energetic, straightforward girl, Xiaoxi's lips involuntarily curled up. Next, Huo Jiancheng approached warmly. He handed her a thick, heavy red envelope and explained with a kind smile. "I missed the wedding, and I wasn't sure what you liked, so I just wrapped up my sincerest intentions in this tacky red paper." Xiaoxi looked toward Huo Xingzhou. It wasn't until he gave her a subtle nod of approval that she graciously accepted the envelope and softly thanked him. Huo Xingzhou blinked playfully. "My dad has a ton of secret stash money. Just take it all, sister-in-law." This earned her a glaring rebuke from the second madam, who warned her not to be disrespectful. But Huo Xingzhou didn't hold back. In an excellent mood, she brought up the past, bluntly stating that Qiao Shi was 100 times better than the woman who abandoned them when disaster struck. And after the car crash, she ran faster than anyone, and she was supposed to be from Xinwei. Just as she was about to finish, the second madam sharply cut her off. Huo Xijiao shrank back and quickly shut her mouth, clearly realizing it was inappropriate to gossip about the woman who saved him in front of Qiao Shi. Qiao Shi secretly pondered the words Xinye. She wondered if it was the same Xinye Foundation that had sponsored her education. She made a mental note to find a time to ask Huo Xingzhou about it. Just then, Aunt Chen relayed a message. There was to be a family dinner at the main estate tonight. Hearing this, Du Huan immediately looked displeased. I just had a massive fallout with Huo Beiting. Having a family dinner now is clearly a weasel paying its respects to a hen. They have ulterior motives. Huo Jiansheng tried to comfort her, picking up his phone to decline. But before he could get 2 words out, his usually calm face completely froze. Even the fingers gripping the phone trembled slightly. He just stared blankly, repeatedly confirming the news. Du Huan frantically asked what was wrong. Huo Jiansheng took a deep breath and finally revealed, the old patriarch found the disciple of the national doctor Cheng Han. This person has the skill to cure our son's legs. Du Huan's previous resistance instantly vanished into thin air, replaced by a brilliant light of surprise. She decisively declared that even if it was a trap, they were going. Huo Xijiao jumped up in excitement, shouting across the room that her brother's legs were going to be saved. Qiaoxi instinctively looked down at the man beside her, feeling a tinge of bitterness. In front of the disciple of such a legendary doctor, my meager medical skills are really nothing to look at. However, Huo Xingzhou showed zero joy. Instead, he grabbed her wrist tightly. His voice was heavy with instruction. When we get to the main house, you must stand behind me. No matter what happens, do not speak. Qiaoxi's heart sank. She couldn't understand why a normal family dinner made him act as if he were facing a deadly enemy. At 6 p.m., the family of 5 punctually stepped into the brightly lit main estate. Inside, people milled about. A high-pitched, grating voice was bossing the servants around, telling them to be quicker. Du Huan lowered her voice and whispered to Qiaoxi that this was the first aunt, infamous for being calculating, incredibly tricky, and obsessed with saving face, nicknamed the modern Wang Shifeng, a notoriously shrewd literary character. She then gestured toward the couch, pointing out the seemingly refined but actually incredibly slick first uncle, Huo Jianjun. Qiaoxi nodded silently, realizing that absolutely no one in this room was easy to deal with. First, Aunt Wang Fengxian turned her head, spotted the second branch family, and instantly plastered on a sarcastic smile. She deliberately raised her voice, mockingly complaining that Huo Xingzhou had delayed everyone because he was in a wheelchair. Du Huan shot back without hesitation, criticizing her for still having such a sharp, toxic tongue. But Wang Fengxian only doubled down. She looked Qiao Shi up and down, sneering. A country bumpkin paired with a cripple in a wheelchair. A match made in heaven. Qiao Shi's face darkened instantly. Those piercing words felt like fish bones stuck in her throat. Huo Xijiao couldn't swallow this insult. She jumped out and fired back, accusing her first aunt's mouth of smelling like she hadn't brushed her teeth, sarcastically worrying that the stench would knock her uncle out. Wang Fengxian's face went from pale to purple. Raising her pitch, she pointed at Huo Xijiao's nose, demanding to know if the second branch had any manners. Huo Xijiao put her hands on her hips and slowly replied that she just loved telling the truth, even joking that if the goddess Nua had used first aunt's thick skin to patch the sky, the sun would never shine again. Wang Fengxian had never been spoken to like this. Enraged, she raised her hand to slap her. But Huo Xijiao was fast. She dodged and simultaneously grabbed Wang Fengxian's wrist, twisting it hard. For a moment, the entire living room echoed with Wang Fengxian's pig-like squeals. Just then, a deeply authoritative shout swept out from the staircase. The Huo family patriarch slowly appeared, leaning on a cane. Beside him stood a smug Huo Beiting and a refined yet shrewd-looking middle-aged man. Old Master Huo authoritatively ordered everyone to sit. He then bluntly stated that since the first branch had gone to such great lengths to invite Mr. Cheng Han's personal disciple, the second branch naturally had to hand over the collaborative project as a consultation fee. These words plunged the second branch into an icy abyss. They felt utterly suffocated. Who would have thought that their own family would calculate and price tag their loyalty like this? The first branch couldn't hide their joy. They even deliberately provoked Du Huan, hinting, "Does the second branch value a business project over your son's legs?" It was a forced choice, her son's life or her son's hard work. Du Huan stated that as long as her son's legs could be cured, they would give up the project. but the prerequisite was that they had to verify this doctor's true abilities. Old Master Huo scoffed coldly and nodded for Dr. Zhuo to step up. The next second, the man named Zhuo Feng stepped forward, crouched by the wheelchair, and pressed down forcefully on a pressure point on Huo Xingzhou's leg. Qiaoxi watched with bated breath, only to realize the man was applying brute force to the Zusanli acupoint, attempting to forcefully dispel internal blood clots. Knowing that Huo Xingzhou's current pulse and meridians were incredibly fragile, she knew that using brute force right now would backfire entirely and worsen his condition beyond repair. Forgetting her status in the setting, Qiaoxi sharply yelled, "Stop!" Zhuo Feng's lips curled in a disdainful smirk, asking if she was trying to teach a veteran with decades of medical experience how to do his job. Simultaneously, the first branch of the Huo family erupted in sneers. They even questioned if the little village girl was afraid that once Huo Xingzhou's legs were cured, she'd be unceremoniously kicked out of the wealthy family. Qiaoxi held her breath, desperate to explain. But before she could, a long-fingered hand beat her to it. Huo Xingzhou pinched a steaming hot pastry and undeniably stuffed it into her mouth, blocking everything she was about to say. Slowly and methodically, he took a napkin and wiped the grease from his fingers. With an utterly unbothered expression, he told her to taste it. Qiaoxi's eyes crashed into his deep, pool-like gaze. She suddenly remembered his warning from earlier. She decided that no matter what happened, she would stand behind him and stay silent. She swallowed the pastry, deciding to trust this unfathomable man unconditionally. Huo Xingzhou calmly gestured for Dr. Zhuo to continue, casually explaining that his wife was young and hadn't seen much of the world. Zhuo Feng let out a snort, acting as if he were doing the second young master a huge favor, and pressed down hard on his leg. Huo Xingzhou's brow twitched slightly. Though he was polite on the outside, his mind was crystal clear. This old man's technique was 100,000 miles worse than Qiaoxi's. Then Zhuo Feng stood up and confidently promised the patriarch that the illness was completely within his capabilities. Huo Beiting eagerly pulled out the transfer contract, urging his cousin to sign it quickly. Watching from the side, Qiaoxi felt incredibly suffocated and heartbroken. This was an illness she could cure. Why did Huo Xingzhou insist on giving away such a massive project? Did he still not trust his own wife? But Huo Xingzhou didn't entertain her internal conflict. He took the pen and signed his name. Having obtained the contract, Huo Beiting's arrogance reached new heights. He mockingly ridiculed Huo Xingzhou for not being able to handle a minor issue. Wang Fengxian couldn't stop smiling either, boasting that her son was best buddies with Director Sun, and that resolving the land dispute for the project was a piece of cake. Just as the words left her mouth, Huo Beiting's phone vibrated wildly. Showing off, he turned on the speakerphone, fully intending to humiliate the second branch in public. Director Sun's gruff voice echoed through the living room, announcing that he was willing to relocate his ancestral home for the future city project. Huo Beiting's face was smeared with smugness. Just as he prepared to accept the credit, the next sentence left the entire room petrified. Director Sun stated plainly that he only agreed out of respect for Qiaoxi from the second branch, and that he wanted to invite the couple out to dinner sometime. In that instant, the living room was so dead silent you could hear a pin drop. Huo Xijiao didn't miss the opportunity to activate her mockery mode, asking exactly how much her cousin's influence was really worth. Du Huan stepped in to lightly reprimand her, but the smile in her eyes couldn't be hidden. Huo Xingzhou calmly thanked his cousin for introducing the doctor, then quickly led his family away. In the blink of an eye, the patriarch's furious roar exploded in the room, cursing the first branch for being opportunistic losers. Huo Beiting, his fingers pale from anger, gritted his teeth and called Sun Weiming to demand answers. Only then did he learn that Qiaoxi had miraculously saved Sun Weiming's life at a pharmacy, becoming the Sun family's savior. Huo Beiting scoffed at the news, assuming it was just a blind cat catching a dead mouse pure luck. Huo Jianjun spoke up at this moment, pointing out that by losing the project, the second branch had completely severed their foundation for inheritance. Originally furious, Huo Beiting's eyes lit up with wild joy upon hearing that the patriarch planned to officially hand over power at his upcoming birthday banquet. A venomous glint flashed in Huo Jianjun's eyes. Even if the old man didn't announce it, he had his ways to ensure the first branch secured the throne. Huo Beiting's lips curled into a cruel smile, concluding that Huo Xingzhou, that sickly cripple, wouldn't live much longer anyway. Meanwhile, inside the small Huo villa, the atmosphere was completely different and warm. Du Huan let out a long sigh, her face unable to hide her relief. Even though they lost the massive project, seeing hope for her son's legs was enough. In her eyes, keeping the family together and healthy was far better than mountains of gold and silver. Huo Jiancheng nodded repeatedly, stating he had long stopped caring about vanity and power struggles. A healthy, disaster-free family was what truly mattered. Then, as if suddenly remembering something, he looked at his son with confusion, unable to understand why the famously arrogant young master's son would relocate his ancestral home just to do him a favor. Huo Xingzhou pondered for a moment before revealing the mystery. A few days ago, while he was out, Qiao Shi had run into the collapsed young master's son and saved him. The Sun family's massive gesture was clearly their way of repaying the debt to their savior. Hearing this, Du Huan's face lit up. She couldn't stop praising Qiao Xi, mentioning that even the usually picky Aunt Qian couldn't stop raving about Qiao Xi's massage techniques, not to mention the herbal tonics she personally selected and brewed. This deep, genuine care truly protected Xingzhou. Huo Xijiao listened, her eyes shining. She grabbed Qiao Xi's hands tightly and excitedly declared that her sister-in-law was an all-around goddess, and she was going to cling to her tightly. Qiao Xi blushed deeply, mumbling softly that it was just luck. Huo Xingzhou kept his gaze fixed on her, ripples forming in the long, dormant lake of his heart. He suddenly realized that this seemingly fragile girl was truly his exclusive good luck charm. He noticed the awkwardness in Qiao Xi's eyes and planned to find a chance to speak to her alone and clear up the misunderstanding. But before his fingers could even brush her sleeve, Huo Sijiao energetically dragged Qiao Xi toward the second floor, shouting as she ran that she was going to monopolize her sister-in-law for the night. She even threw in a complaint that her own brother was an unromantic bore. Huo Xingzhou watched the two disappear around the corner, his hands suspended in mid-air, holding nothing. Seeing his defeated look, Du Huan and Huo Jianqing couldn't help but laugh together. Du Huan even brought up old history, teasing him about how someone had demanded a divorce the second he woke up. It hit right at Huo Xingzhou's sore spot. Since there was hope for their son's legs, the older couple reached a tacit agreement. They would move back to the main estate to give the young couple plenty of space to fall in love. Huo Xingzhou sighed helplessly, rubbing his temples, looking at his empty hand and wondering exactly how to coax his little good luck charm, who was definitely still mad at him. Just as a teasing smile appeared on Du Huan's lips, Aunt Qian hurried over and accidentally rescued Huo Xingzhou from the awkward moment. She lowered her voice to announce that young Master Zhou had been waiting in the study for quite a while. Watching her son walk away, Du Huan sighed in admiration, feeling lucky they had married such a caring, sensible girl. Aunt Qian chimed in, praising them as a perfect match, and even suggesting the young madam was 100 times better than that girl from the Shu family. Upon hearing the surname Shu, Du Huan's face instantly darkened. She coldly ordered Aunt Qian never to bring up that cursed person again, terrifying Aunt Qian into quickly retreating. Inside the study, the atmosphere was completely different. Zhou Yu, looking utterly suspicious, pressed to know if the massive project had really been handed over to Huo Beiting. Huo Xingzhou looked entirely composed. If you don't let him taste a little sweetness, how can you watch him climb high and fall hard? Hearing this, Zhou Yu rested his chin in his hand, revealing a playful smile. Playing hard to get... Brilliant. There's a landmine buried in that project just waiting for Huo Beiting to jump on it. Not only do you dump the baggage, but you can also make the Qianyuan group bite back with a penalty fee. Thinking about the impending scene of the first branch crying and begging, Zhou Yu gave a thumbs up, calling Huo Xingzhou's move ruthlessly brilliant. Huo Xingzhou lowered his eyes, his hand suddenly clenching into a fist on the armrest of his wheelchair. He hadn't forgotten that car accident for a single second. It was the first branch scheming to take his life. If Qiao Shi hadn't risked her life to save him back then, his legs would have rotted in the ground long ago. Suddenly, Zhou Yu leaned in close, smiling like a thief. He demanded to know how Huo Xingzhou planned to repay his life debt, even steering his thoughts toward romantic and physical matters. Rumors outside said young Master Huo had issues in that department. Zhou Yu boldly probed for the truth, flashing a wicked grin to ask if he had feelings for his wife. A cold glint flashed in Huo Xingzhou's eyes. This guy's head is filled with garbage. Seeing his dark expression, Zhou Yu realized he had stepped on a landmine. He quickly slapped his own mouth and changed the subject, expressing concern about Qiao Shi's situation. He feared the first branch would follow the clues and dig up her background. But Huo Xingzhou seemed completely at ease. The people in the first branch were arrogant. They would never suspect that Qiao Shi was the personal disciple of Cheng Han. Next, Zhou Yu brought up the fact that even experts were helpless regarding his legs. Yet Qiao Xi had managed to save Sun Weiming, the infamous troublemaker. Huo Xingzhou dismissed it. As a healer, saving lives was Chaoxi's duty. Moving forward, he would use every means to protect her. He also warned Zhou to keep his mouth strictly shut. Zhou nodded, then asked if the family elders were to be kept in the dark as well. Huo Xingzhou looked down at his knees. Until the day he could stand up, the truth would remain hidden. Early the next morning, Chaoxi was fully prepared and began treating Huo Xingzhou right on time. The man sat quietly in his wheelchair, his eyes locked onto her busy small figure. She had her lips pressed tightly together, displeasure written all over her face. The elders had left the house, making this the perfect time to coax her. However, just as he spoke a single word, Chaoxi stood up abruptly and turned on the wall-mounted LCD TV. The loud noise instantly drowned out his voice. Huo Xingzhou hit a brick wall, realizing this little girl's temper was nothing to scoff at. Suddenly, Huo Xingzhou frowned deeply and let out a muffled groan of pain. Chaoxi spun around instantly. Seeing him like this, she panicked and rushed over, anxiously asking where it hurt. Before she knew what was happening, Huo Xingzhou pulled her forcefully, pulling her straight into his broad chest. Chaoxi was forced to straddle his lap, struggling in pure embarrassment. But Huo Xingzhou's arms were like iron bands, locking tightly around her waist. His deep voice demanded she listen to his explanation before leaving. Chaoxi turned her head away, tearfully accusing him of not trusting her, of preferring to trade a project for someone else's treatment. Huo Xingzhou chuckled softly, explaining that Zhuo Feng was just a spy planted by the first branch. Giving away the project was merely baiting the snake out of its hole. Precisely because he trusted her medical skills, he needed her cooperation to put on a show and deceive them all. The anger in Chaoxi's heart finally subsided, replaced by curiosity about the plan. Huo Xingzhou instructed her strictly, until he could stand up. She must absolutely never reveal her astonishing medical skills to outsiders. Chaoxi nodded obediently. Her innocent, shy demeanor made Huo Xingzhou's heart tremble. At that moment, Zhou Yu's teasing echoed in his head. How could he not have feelings for her? Blushing, Chaoxi pushed against his chest, urging him to let go so they could finish the treatment. She squatted down, her fingers expertly massaging the acupressure points on his legs. But being surrounded by his burning gaze made her feel like she had nowhere to hide, her cheeks flushing deeper. At the same time, the TV broadcasted a news report. It discussed the founder of the Xinyue Foundation, whose identity remained a mystery, but who had sponsored countless impoverished students. Chaoxi listened intently, suddenly remembering Huo Xijiao mentioning the name. She couldn't help but sigh, mentioning that she was once a recipient. Thanks to the anonymous sponsor, the kids in Moon Village were able to leave the mountains and finish their education. Because of this, she always longed to personally thank her benefactor. Huo Xingzhou's eyes instantly became deep and complex. He asked quietly what she planned to do. 2 words, repay debt, written in her clear, sincere eyes. Huo Xingzhou never imagined that a casual act of charity from years ago had become the light sustaining her. As if bewitched, he reached out and gently rubbed her soft hair. In an instant, an indescribable, ambiguous tension wildly bloomed in the quiet air. Chaoxi's heart hammered. She wanted to test the waters and ask if Huo Xingzhou was that person. Mr. Huo, are you that person? The crucial question hung right on the tip of Chaoxi's tongue. But before she could speak it, a sudden knock on the door brutally shattered the delicate atmosphere. Aunt Qian's loud voice pierced through the door. Young master, the Sun family is here. The ambiguous tension that had been quietly building was instantly washed away. Huo Xingzhou replied with a low acknowledgement. Chaoxi quickly steadied herself, clumsily helping him adjust his collar, murmuring that she would push him downstairs. As her pale, delicate hands rested near his neck, a long-lost flutter rose in Huo Xingzhou's chest. But remembering Zhou Yu's ridiculous comments, he gritted his teeth and forcefully suppressed the restless urge. When Chaoxi pushed Huo Xingzhou into the living room, the Sun family mother and son both turned to look. Mrs. Sun greeted them with dignified grace, but the moment Sun Weiming saw Chaoxi, his face turned as red as a ripe tomato. He stammered, unable to get a single word out. Mrs. Sun, a straightforward woman, didn't mince words. She immediately pulled out a check for $500,000 and handed it over, earnestly declaring that if the young madam hadn't intervened, the consequences would have been unimaginable. She insisted they take it. Startled, Chaoxi waved her hands in refusal, claiming it was just a small effort. Mrs. Sun raised an eyebrow, asking if it wasn't enough, looking as if she'd multiply the amount tenfold if Chaoxi dared nod. Huo Xingzhou knew how the Sun family operated. They loved throwing money at problems. He reached out, took the check, and firmly pressed it into Chaoxi's palm, authoritatively stating that since it was offered, she should take it. After all, young Master Sun's life was worth a fortune. This amount was nothing. Right then, Sun Weiming, hiding behind his mother, cautiously asked if the rumors were true, that the second young Master Huo really was incapable now, expressing pity that Xiaoxi had to live a celibate life. Mrs. Sun was so furious she wanted to sew her son's mouth shut on the spot, sharply scolding him for spouting nonsense. But Sun Weiming held his head defensively, acting wronged, yelling that he just wanted to ask Xiaoxi to treat his own illness. What if a few massages fixed him up? After all, what man wants to be ridiculed for having hidden issues for years? Xiaoxi bit her lip, her watery eyes full of conflict. Even though Sun Weiming looked pathetic, she had promised Huo Xingzhou she would hide her skills. Helplessly, she extended a finger and covertly hooked Huo Xingzhou's hand. The man smoothly flipped his hand and grasped her fingers, his thumb rubbing against the smooth back of her hand. Then he traced a word onto her palm. Yes. Gratefully glancing at Huo Xingzhou, Xiaoxi turned to Sun Weiming and said she had a wellness prescription he could try. Sun Weiming, treating it like a lifeline, nodded like a woodpecker. He immediately pulled out his phone to add her on WeChat, happily setting her contact name as Fairy. Although Mrs. Sun sighed, thinking it was just another useless attempt, Xiaoxi confidently sent the prescription, adding that it was a secret recipe passed down from her master. Treating it like treasure, Sun Weiming swore to send her a silk banner of gratitude once he was cured, and finally left completely satisfied. The living room returned to silence. However, Huo Xingzhou's deep eyes were now locked onto Xiaoxi like rays, as if trying to see right through her. Under the immense pressure, Xiaoxi quickly explained that the prescription took a long time to work and required secrecy. But the man simply steered his wheelchair away, casually asking why she was so good at curing that kind of illness as well. Xiaoxi's ears turned red. She instinctively stepped back, hastily assuring Huo Xingzhou not to worry. She confessed that for the past 2 days, she had been specifically adding kidney-nourishing and vitality-boosting ingredients to his herbal soup. She figured that all men cared about that sort of thing. As long as he drank it for a while to replenish his energy, the car crash wouldn't have a lasting impact. Hearing this, Huo Xingzhou let out a dark laugh. He thought it was his own lack of self-control being triggered by Zhou Yu's words, but it turned out the culprit was the bowl of soup. He shot his right hand out, forcefully and fiercely capturing Xiaoxi's wrist, yanking her flush against him. Through gritted teeth, he demanded to know who taught her to randomly add ingredients, asking if she knew what a man surging with energy might do. Forced against his chest, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing, Xiaoxi's face flushed a deep crimson. Struggling, she argued it was a doctor's duty, then forcefully pried his fingers open, not daring to meet his dark eyes. Throwing out an excuse about needing to brew more medicine, she fled in a panic. Huo Xingzhou took a deep breath, trying hard to suppress the restless heat in his body, secretly laughing at himself for bickering with an innocent little girl. But he was deeply curious about how many people she had casually done this doctor's duty for. Hiding in the kitchen, Xiaoxi's heart pounded. She assumed Huo Xingzhou's intense reaction was due to a bruised ego. Once her breathing steadied, she tossed the herbs into the pot. Hesitating for a moment, Grandpa Cheng's teachings echoed in her mind. Men being treated for hidden issues are easily humiliated and prone to anger. A doctor must be understanding. And so, as if possessed, she grabbed another handful of vitality-boosting herbs and tossed them into the pot. Just then, her phone buzzed in her pocket. Xiaoxi checked it. Her college class group chat was blowing up about a reunion dinner, and someone had specifically tagged her. She originally wanted to ignore it and turn off her screen, but her college roommate, Ye Manman, bombarded her with private messages, playing the sympathy card about how they had all drifted apart after graduation. After a long hesitation, Xiaoxi finally replied, agreeing to go. Huo Xingzhou was lounging lazily in a wicker chair on the bedroom balcony, flipping through a book. Xiaoxi walked over lightly, carrying a bowl of medicine. The faint, bitter scent of Chinese herbs instantly filled the air. Huo Xingzhou lifted his eyelids, casually placing the book face down on his lap. His deep gaze swept over her, seemingly asking if she had added the special herbs again. Like a child caught doing something wrong, Xiaoxi lowered her head, her cheeks warm as she admitted it. Internally, she kicked herself for being so honest, making it seem like she was incredibly eager for him. To her surprise, Huo Xingzhou withdrew his icy demeanor. His long fingers steadily took the bowl, and he tipped his head back, draining it in one gulp. His deep voice carried a hint of apology as he said he shouldn't have lost his temper with her earlier. Since this little girl is convinced I'm lacking stamina, I'll just let her keep misunderstanding for now. Xiaoxi stared at him for a long moment, the corners of her mouth rising uncontrollably as she praised him for being a good boy, even calling him the most obedient patient she had ever seen. Then, like offering a treasure, she pulled out the $500,000 check and solemnly pressed it into Huo Xingzhou's warm palm, hoping he could donate it to the Xinyue Foundation on her behalf. While brewing the medicine, she had asked Aunt Qian and confirmed what she had guessed. The man before her was the benefactor who had sponsored her education. He was the one who let light into her life and kept her from dropping out. Perhaps it was the medicine kicking in, but being stared at by the girl's clear, bright eyes made Huo Xingzhou feel an unprecedented sense of satisfaction. It even stirred up some hidden adult thoughts. The words rolled on his tongue before coming out with a hint of subtle probing. He asked if she wanted to repay her debt. Completely missing the suggestive undertone, Qiaoxi solemnly promised that she would make him stand again. As soon as the words left her mouth, she blushed in embarrassment, realizing she had gotten a bit too intense. Huo Xingzhou let out a light laugh, a glint of teasing in his eyes. He casually noted that she had treated multiple patients, yet only Sun Weiming got her contact info. Isn't that a bit biased? Flustered, Qiaoxi pulled out her phone, opened her QR code, and explained that she was going to a class reunion in a few days, and he could contact her anytime. After adding him, Huo Xingzhou watched curiously to see what name she would save him under. Right at that moment, a knock sounded at the door. Aunt Qian loudly announced that Dr. Zhuo had arrived. Hearing that name, Qiaoxi stiffened, her defenses instantly shooting up. That man was a total rat with corrupt medical ethics. She absolutely couldn't let him harm Huo Xingzhou. Huo Xingzhou patted the back of her hand soothingly, gesturing for her to stay calm. Dr. Zhuo, led by Aunt Qian, swaggered up to the second floor. Seeing only one servant in the cold villa, he sneered internally, thinking the second branch had truly fallen. They couldn't compare to the grandeur of the first branch. But the moment he saw Qiaoxi, the disgust in his eyes was no longer hidden. He rudely tried to kick her out, bluntly stating that no outsiders were allowed during treatment, especially an arrogant, ungraduated medical student. Suppressing her anger, Qiaoxi promised she wouldn't interfere. But Zhuo Feng only insulted her further, mocking her for trying to steal his techniques, using the name of Cheng Han's disciple to scare him, and claiming she'd never see such brilliant skills in her lifetime. Huo Xingzhou, however, remained entirely calm. He pulled Qiaoxi close, their fingers interlacing. With a playful tone, he declared that newlyweds were practically glued together and couldn't bear to be apart for a single second. Qiaoxi's face flushed completely red. What nonsense is this man saying? It's so embarrassing. Zhuo Feng scoffed coldly and gave in, thinking that since she had mediocre talent anyway, she wouldn't be able to steal his techniques. Huo Xingzhou thanked him, but internally he was laughing his head off. Aside from Cheng Han himself, no one knew Qiaoxi's true talent better than he did. This fake doctor in front of them was ridiculously arrogant. Zhuo Feng began massaging his legs. Qiaoxi stared intensely at his technique, mentally reciting the acupressure points. She quickly realized his methods looked complex but were actually useless. He wasn't genuinely treating him at all. Huo Xingzhou noticed her realization and gave a subtle shake of his head. After finishing, Zhuo Feng tossed a packet of herbs for a medicinal bath, announced he would return in 3 days, and left with his kit. The moment he was gone, Qiaoxi tore open the packet, sniffed it carefully, and picked out 2 pills that had been tampered with. With a grave expression, she concluded, the massage was fine, but this medicine was poisoned. Her beautiful face turned to ice, her eyes full of disgust. His methods are so vile. He actually dyed low-quality herbal powder to pass it off as premium. Huo Xingzhou rested his chin on his hand, looking at her lazily, his eyes full of affection. With a little divine doctor at home, no matter how much the enemy schemed, it was all in vain. Qiaoxi, however, softly argued back, blushing as she insisted she was just an ungraduated medical student with average skills. Even if he called her a divine doctor, she didn't deserve it. Huo Xingzhou chuckled softly, thinking to himself, this little fool really doesn't know her own worth. That medical titan, Mr. Cheng, would surely step up to support her and make her famous one day. Seeing Qiaoxi blinking at him in innocent confusion, he didn't point it out, knowing this unpolished gem would shine brightly in Sea City sooner or later. Instead, he changed the subject, asking her to prepare the medicinal bath according to her own prescription. Then, completely naturally, he reached out and asked for her phone. Unsuspecting, Qiaoxi handed it over. Huo Xingzhou swiped the screen, opened WeChat, and saw the contact name, Mr. Huo. A flash of expected resignation crossed his eyes. His fingers moved rapidly, changing the name directly. Curious, Qiaoxi leaned in to peek. Heat instantly rushed to her face, a flush spreading from her ears down to her slender white neck. It was beyond embarrassing. He had actually changed his contact name to Hubby. Xiaoxi snatched her phone back, stammering, "How could you just change the name like that?" The man didn't even blink, offering a high-sounding excuse. The original name was too distant, and if someone with ulterior motives saw it, it would raise suspicions. Xiaoxi puffed her cheeks out like a little pufferfish, unconvinced, and asked what name he had saved her under. Huoxingzhou frowned slightly, pretending his leg hurt, and sucked in a breath, effortlessly changing the subject. Xiaoxi immediately fell for it, bending down to check his legs. This girl is really too easy to fool, he thought. Huoxingzhou smoothly grabbed her hand, casually asking where her class reunion was being held. Xiaoxi honestly replied that it was at the Shanghai Banquet Hall, adding she would just take a cab. After confirming his legs were fine, Xiaoxi went to prepare the bath. Watching her slender figure disappear out the door, the smile on Huoxingzhou's lips vanished. He picked up his phone and called Zhou Yu, his voice freezing as he ordered, "Change tonight's secret meeting to the Shanghai Banquet Hall, 6 p.m. Dozens of young men and women gathered together, chattering noisily about why Xiaoxi hadn't arrived yet, even maliciously speculating about rumors that she was being kept by a sugar daddy. A few girls huddled together whispering. Ye Manman pretended to defend her, but her words were laced with poison, hinting that Xiaoxi had a poor background and her grandmother was sick, so she had her reasons. This manipulative talk solidified the rumor that Xiaoxi had sold her soul for money. Just then, the somewhat handsome Chen Shu raised his glass, proudly announcing that tonight's $18,000 per table VIP feast was on him, drawing cheers and flattery from the crowd. Chen Shu shot a smug glance at Ye Manman, who understood perfectly. In the dim hallway outside, Chen Shu coldly confirmed Xiaoxi's whereabouts. Ye Manman leaned against the wall, snobbishly reminding him not to forget the $100,000 he promised her. Chen Shu scoffed, a vile, lustful gleam in his eyes. As long as it worked out, she would get her money. Plus, he could personally verify if Xiaoxi was worth it. The two struck a deal. Suddenly, Ye Manman lifted her chin. Someone was coming. At the end of the corridor, bathed in the soft, warm light, Xiaoxi walked gracefully toward them. Her aloof, elegant aura made her look stunning and radiant under the shadows like a moon goddess. Chen Shu's eyes instantly exploded with obsession. He eagerly went up to guide her in. Ye Manman switched into harmless best friend mode, affectionately linking arms with Xiaoxi, playfully complaining she was late, and seating her right between herself and Chen Shu. During the dinner, Ye Manman played the role of a caring friend, pouring Xiaoxi a glass of a mixed drink and hypocritically asking if she needed a loan for her grandmother's medical bills. Unsuspecting, Xiaoxi took a sip. Thinking the alcohol taste was faint and the flavor decent, she drank 2 glasses. But it wasn't long before her cheeks started burning and her head grew heavy and dizzy. She shook her heavy head, excused herself to Ye Manman, and got up to go to the restroom. Watching her stumble away, a victorious, sinister smile crept onto Ye Manman's lips. Chen Shu couldn't wait, exchanging a knowing glance with her. Stumbling out of the private room, Xiaoxi's legs felt like noodles. She leaned weakly against the hallway wall, panting. Suddenly, the phone in her pocket buzzed. Through blurry eyes, she saw the name Hubby. Her sluggish brain managed to answer the call. Her voice was incredibly soft, like a helpless little kitten. On the other end, Huoxingzhou's breathing hitched. Realizing something was wrong, his voice went dark as he asked if she was drunk. Xiaoxi, trying to hold on to her last thread of consciousness, whimpered that she couldn't walk and wanted to go home. Huoxingzhou immediately ordered her to stay exactly where she was. She nodded obediently, looking pitiful and adorable. But suddenly, Chen Shu's sickeningly enthusiastic voice came from behind. The next second, a large hand aggressively grabbed hers, trying to drag her into a pre-booked hotel room next door without a word of explanation. Using all her strength, Xiaoxi yanked her hand away from his filthy grip. Her pupils shrank with revulsion as she desperately backed up to put distance between them. But Chen Shu didn't care. He forcefully pulled her into his arms, a greasy, triumphant smile on his face, whispering a threat that if she was a good girl tonight, she could have whatever she wanted later. Trembling with fear, Xiaoxi sharply warned him that this was illegal. Chen Shu turned a deaf ear, dragging and pulling her toward the room, hurling filthy insults, telling her to stop acting pure when he knew exactly what kind of trash she was. An overwhelming wave of nausea surged in her. Driven by a pure survival instinct, Xiaoxi blindly grabbed his arm and pinched down with all her might, screaming at him to get away. Chen Shu's face twisted in agony, He gasped, instinctively letting go, then cursed her in a fit of humiliation, threatening that if she wanted to do it the hard way, he would force her. Before he could finish his sentence, a sharp shadow flew in like lightning. With a sickening thud, Chen Shu was kicked entirely through the air. The attacker looked at him with absolute disgust, dusting off his pants. He mocked the scumbag for trying to commit assault, asking if he wanted to lose his abilities permanently. Chen Shu sprawled on the ground, putting on a brave face as he roared, asking who the hell they were and swearing he wouldn't let them get away with this. Zhou Yu slowly rolled up his sleeves, stepping closer with a rogue-like grin, joking that in a civilized society, he was simply doing a good deed. Seeing that this guy was not someone to mess with, Chen Shu turned and ran, throwing out a pathetic threat from a safe distance. With the danger gone, Qiao Shi's tightly strung nerves finally snapped. The next second, her body felt entirely drained of strength and she collapsed uncontrollably. In her panic, a warm, powerful hand accurately caught her wrist. Before she knew it, she was sitting squarely on Huo Xingzhou's lap. Sitting in his wheelchair, Huo Xingzhou lowered his eyes, his deep gaze fixed on the terrified girl in his arms. He raised a hand to gently stroke her hair, comforting her. Qiao Shi's nose stung, and her eyes instantly rimmed red. Like a wronged child, she whimpered, "Mr. Huo." Huo Xingzhou gently patted her back, his deep voice ordering, "Let's go home first." Meanwhile, back in the private room, Chen Shu returned with a black eye. Ye Manman immediately rushed up to ask where Qiao Shi was. Chen Shu's face was so dark it could drip water. Cursing, he said some broke busybody had intervened, some guy in cheap clothes, and insulted Qiao Shi for hanging out with lowlifes. Ye Manman's heart tightened, terrified her $100,000 was gone. She suggested they ask her uncle for help. Chen Shu rejected the idea through gritted teeth, thinking it was too humiliating to run crying over something this small, but he swore he wasn't going to let this go. In the car, the air pressure was dangerously low. Zhou Yu, sitting in the passenger seat, glanced through the rearview mirror at the two figures huddled together in the back. He reported, "I found out who he is. That guy was an obsessed stalker of my sister-in-law. He's been after her for years without success and wanted to use the graduation party to force himself on her." Huo Xingzhou frowned, not understanding. Qiao Shi wasn't usually careless. How did she get so drunk? Zhou Yu shrugged. They were drinking Long Island iced teas. It tastes like lemon juice, but the kick is massive. A good girl like my sister-in-law has never seen that trick before. It's normal she fell for it. As they spoke, Qiao Shi, curled up like a kitten in Huo Xingzhou's arms, buried her face even deeper. Her burning cheeks pressed against his cool skin, and she rubbed comfortably against him, mumbling softly, "So cool." Huo Xingzhou tried to pull her away, but she was like superglue. The second he created distance, she stuck right back. Zhou Yu watched this incredibly intimate scene with an amused grin. Pinching his throat, he mimicked her in a high-pitched voice. "Hubby, so cool." Huo Xingzhou's death glare swept over him. "Shut up." But Zhou Yu was feeling playful and kept going, "Do you want it, hubby?" Huo Xingzhou's face went pitch black. He coldly snapped Zhou Yu's name. Hearing the absolute warning in his tone, Zhou Yu awkwardly coughed and immediately dialed it back, afraid he had actually enraged the boss and his own businesses would suffer. Getting serious, he asked how they should handle tonight's incident. Did they need to send someone to take care of it? Huo Xingzhou cut him off, signaling not to blow it up since Huo Beiting's people were watching. Zhou Yu sighed, disappointed they had to let the kid off. But a cold, murderous light flared in Huo Xingzhou's eyes as he added softly, "But I never said I was letting him off." The car drove all the way back to the small villa. Hearing the commotion, Aunt Qian rushed out to check. Huo Xingzhou simply said she got drunk at a reunion and asked the kitchen to prepare hangover soup. Aunt Qian quickly obliged and left. Back in the bedroom, Huo Xingzhou looked down at the woman in his arms, who was still clinging to him for dear life, mumbling about how cool he was. Her almond eyes were hazy and wet, completely operating on pure instinct to seek his cool touch. That coolness somehow reminded her of the desperate yet hopeful moment she had been trapped in the snowy mountains years ago. Groggy, she mumbled, "Thank you so much, Mr. Huo." Forcing himself to stay calm, Huo Xingzhou asked, "Thank me for what?" Qiao Shi answered in broken pieces, "For saving Grandma. For the money. You're the best patient I've ever had." She then murmured that she had a wish. Huo Xingzhou reached up, brushing the messy hair from her cheek. His hoarse, magnetic voice carried a rare gentleness. Since you're drunk, I can be your Aladdin's lamp for tonight. He gestured for her to make a wish. Looking at the ambiguous red marks on her husband's neck, Xiaoxi frowned in concern, worrying it was an allergic reaction to medication. Huo Xingzhou's ears turned slightly red. He covered the marks with his hand and lied without batting an eye. Mosquito bites. Don't make a fuss. Xiaoxi rested her chin on her hand, her eyes full of suspicion. That doesn't make sense. It's the middle of winter. Where would mosquitoes come from? Pfft! A burst of suppressed laughter came from the doorway. Zhou Yu was leaning against the doorframe, waving a catalog in his hand, looking entirely amused. Sorry to interrupt the romance. I'm just the delivery guy. I'll get lost right now. He eagerly handed over the catalog. The auction items are finalized. There's a treasure in here you'll definitely be interested in. Seeing they had business to discuss, Xiaoxi tactfully pointed out the door. You guys chat. I'll go to the kitchen and check on the medicine. But Huo Xingzhou cast a mild glance at her. No need to leave. Come look at this with me. Zhou Yu chimed in. Yeah, sister-in-law. You're not an outsider. Xiaoxi nodded and obediently leaned in to look. Every item in the catalog was worth a fortune, making her click her tongue in awe. Suddenly, her gaze locked onto one specific page, a flash of longing in her eyes. Huo Xingzhou keenly caught the light in her eyes, a faint, almost imperceptible smile curving his lips. He already knew what he was going to do. Right then, Zhou Yu abruptly shifted topics. Oh, by the way, Huo Beiting and Su Weiwei made it official. They were so loud about it, they practically announced it to the whole world. I hear they're also attending this auction. Huo Xingzhou sneered, his eyes filled with mockery. Birds of a feather flock together. Huo Beiting just wants to show off and build hype for his groundbreaking ceremony. Zhou Yu raised a wicked eyebrow. It'll be hilarious watching him drop a rock on his own foot. If he wants the spotlight, he's gonna have to bleed cash. Seeing Huo Xingzhou's unreadable expression, Zhou Yu's curiosity exploded. What evil scheme are you brewing this time? Huo Xingzhou kept him in suspense. You'll see when the time comes. Zhou Yu rolled his eyes, then winked at Xiaoxi. Sister-in-law, how's that medicine coming along? Don't you need to check the heat? Xiaoxi paused for a second before catching on. Oh. She turned and left the room. The moment she was gone, Zhou Yu's face changed entirely. He covered his mouth and leaned in like a massive gossip. Last night must have been wild, huh? Mosquito bites? Yeah, right. You two really know how to keep things spicy. The veins on Huo Xingzhou's forehead throbbed. Suppressing his anger, he demanded, Are you done? Zhou Yu shook his head, looking profound. You can't hide from the doctor, man. Even though Xiaoxi is a great doctor, she's thin-skinned. With that, he sneakily pulled a handful of small pills from his pocket. Your brother here takes care of you. I even took them out of the wrapper. I guarantee this will help you regain your glory. Furious, Huo Xingzhou grabbed the handful of pills and hurled them across the room. The blue stamina pills scattered all over the floor. Zhou Yu frantically bent down to pick them up, his expression comically exaggerated as he clicked his tongue in distress. What a waste. This is a special prescription. It took me forever to get these. Huo Xingzhou glared at him like a knife. Zhou Yu stuck out his tongue. Fine, I won't cross the line. Next time you want them, I won't even give them to you. 3 days later, at the auction venue, Xiaoxi pushed Huo Xingzhou's wheelchair, accompanied by Huo Xijiao, who affectionately linked arms with her. If my sister-in-law hadn't asked, my brother would never have brought me here. Xijiao pouted playfully. I heard there's a lot of good stuff today. Xiaoxi smiled, defending him. Mr. Ho is actually very easy to talk to. Huo Xijiao rolled her eyes. My brother plays favorites. He's only nice to you. Huo Xingzhou cast a flat glance at her. Keep gossiping, and I'll have the driver take you home right now. Just then, a shrill, grating voice interrupted them. Stepmother, look who it is. I was wondering whose maid was dressed so shabbily. Turns out it's my stepsister. A cripple and a village girl. What a perfect match. Huo Xijiao instantly bristled. Pointing at Su Weiwei's nose, she fired back. Su Weiwei, nothing but garbage comes out of a dog's mouth. It's a pity that no matter how much foundation you slap on, it can't hide your ugly soul. You could never compare to my sister-in-law's natural beauty. Su Weiwei's face turned pale. Huo Xijiao, who are you calling a dog? You have absolutely no class. She pulled her shawl tighter, her resentful gaze sweeping over Huo Xingzhou. She scoffed. It won't be long before all of you have to respectfully call me sister-in-law. Watch your mouth, or the second branch won't have a good ending. Huo Xijiao let out a laugh of pure mockery. You and Huo Beiting are a match made in hell. The wicked and the cheap, a perfect pair. Furious, Su Weiwei redirected her attack toward Huo Xingzhou. I heard the second young master is sterile. What a waste of such a good face. Huo Xingzhou slowly lifted his eyes, a deadly cold light flashing within them. My marital life is none of your business. Struck by that freezing glare, Su Weiwei involuntarily shivered. Huo Xingzhou couldn't be bothered to look at her for another second. He patted Qiaoxi's hand gently. Let's go in. Don't dirty your eyes. Watching them leave, Su Weiwei was burning with rage. Zhao Yuzhen tried to grab her hand and calm her down. Weiwei, let it go. Baiting is waiting inside. Don't lower yourself to their level. But Su Weiwei viciously threw off her hand. Don't give me your fake sympathy. She's the good daughter you raised. She is my absolute humiliation. Gritting her teeth, she stared straight ahead, swearing internally that once the auction started, she would make them suffer. As Huo Xingzhou and Qiaoxi entered the venue, the crowd mocked and ridiculed them. They belittled Huo Xingzhou, looked down on Qiaoxi, and claimed the Huo family's future depended entirely on Huo Beiting. Hearing this filth, Huo Sijiao's face flushed with rage. She wanted to rush over and fight the gossiping hags. Qiaoxi also pressed her lips tightly together, her face pale. The next second, she reached out her soft white hands and covered Huo Xingzhou's ears, trying to shield him from the malice. Huo Xingzhou gently pulled her hands down, speaking calmly to show he wasn't that fragile. Qiaoxi frowned, looking at him with deep heartache, insisting she cared and hated hearing people slander him like that. Mr. Huo is an incredible person, she said firmly. Huo Xingzhou's heart stirred. Seeing how genuinely this little woman defended him, he thought to himself, I should definitely open a clinic for her as a reward. Just then, the auction house staff approached with bright smiles, guiding the two of them to the front row. Seeing this, Huo Beiting wore a sinister smile, loudly mocking that his cousin should thank him. If it weren't for his influence, two losers like them wouldn't even be qualified to hold bidding paddles. Huo Xingzhou didn't bat an eye, calmly thanking him. This completely unfazed reaction only angered Huo Beiting further. He scoffed, claiming he didn't need thanks, as taking care of garbage was his responsibility. Right then, the auctioneer's passionate voice echoed through the microphone, announcing the start of the Guardian Auction House's monthly event. Per standard procedure, the auctioneer emphasized that all sales were final and authenticity was not guaranteed. Once the hammer fell, the deal was done. The crowd was used to this, as Guardian rarely dealt in fakes. No one took the disclaimer seriously. Only Huo Xingzhou's eyes flashed with an unreadable, icy glint. The first item was presented, a top-tier Duan family floating flower jade bracelet, starting at $500,000. Huo Xijiao couldn't help but whisper to Qiaoxi, her eyes shining as she explained how famous Duan jade was, praising its translucence and the fact that having 3 flowers inside the stone was incredibly rare. Hearing this, Su Weiwei sneered, insulting Qiaoxi as a country bumpkin who probably couldn't tell glass from jade. Turning to Huo Beiting, she acted cute and begged for it. To win a smile from his beauty, Huo Beiting immediately raised his paddle, calling out a high price of $1 million. As the hammer fell, Su Weiwei got her wish. She eagerly slipped the bracelet onto her wrist to show off, her words dripping with provocation toward Qiaoxi, laughing that her husband was surely too cheap to spend such money. Unexpectedly, Huo Xingzhou elegantly pulled a brocade box from his coat. Slowly, he rolled up Qiaoxi's sleeve and slipped a far more translucent bracelet, boasting much richer floating flowers, onto her delicate wrist. His tone was gentle as he casually mentioned he saw it at a friend's shop and thought it suited her. Gasps of shock erupted around them. The experts in the crowd exclaimed that this was the true masterpiece. It had 6 floating flowers. It was practically priceless, easily worth $5 million at minimum. Su Weiwei's previously smug face shifted between green and red, looking incredibly ugly. Huo Xingzhou even twisted the knife, publicly praising that only with a comparison could you see how beautiful his wife's hands truly were. Huo Beiting snorted, trying to save face by calling it a minor trinket, stating that his target today was the grand finale gift for his grandfather. Su Weiwei chimed in, bringing up the grand finale, a painting titled Pines and Cranes Prolonging Life, mocking the second branch for being too broke to bid on it. Huo Xingzhou raised an eyebrow. What a coincidence. I have my eye on that painting as well. Gritting his teeth, Huo Beiting swore they'd see who had the real power. Huo Xingzhou handed the bidding paddle to Qiaoxi, instructing her to bid. Panic-stricken, Xiaoxi cried that she didn't know how. Huo Xingzhou's long fingers gently rubbed her back, soothingly telling her to just keep raising the price until he said, "Stop." Worried, Xiaoxi asked if he even had that much money, considering rumors said he was broke. Huo Xingzhou rubbed her head, assuring her not to worry. A husband always has his savings. On stage, the elite auctioneer enthusiastically introduced the Tang Dynasty masterpiece, Pines and Cranes Prolonging Life. The starting bid was a staggering $10 million. Though it carried the no authenticity guarantee clause, it had been authenticated by 5 experts. The price skyrocketed, instantly breaking $20 million. To save face, Huo Beiting gritted his teeth and called $22 million. Xiaoxi took a deep breath and, under Huo Xingzhou's instruction, bit hard and raised it to $23 million. Huo Beiting's eyes behind his gold-rimmed glasses were full of mockery. He directly called out $25 million, intending to crush the impoverished second branch with sheer financial weight. Xiaoxi's hand trembled slightly as she looked at the man beside her. Huo Xingzhou reached out, patted her shoulder, and praised her for doing a good job. Then, he took the paddle from her hand and, with perfect composure, called out a number that made the entire room stop breathing. Looking completely detached, he dropped the bombshell, $30 million. As the auctioneer screamed the new price, Xiaoxi's heart hammered. She couldn't believe he had jumped the price by $5 million for a single item. Then Huo Beiting's sarcastic voice sliced through the air. $35 million, Huo Xingzhou. Don't bankrupt yourself just for the sake of your ego. If you can't pay, it's the Huo family that loses face. To everyone's surprise, Huo Xingzhou casually tossed the paddle aside, a playful smirk on his lips. Since my cousin wants to show his filial piety so badly, I naturally must let him have it. Seeing this, Huo Beiting was wildly satisfied. He scoffed coldly, fully believing his cousin was just putting on a brave front. The golden hammer fell, sold for $35 million. The room erupted in applause, praising the first young master's incredible wealth. Huo Beiting stood up proudly, soaking in the flattery with a fake smile, promising to host everyone properly at the groundbreaking ceremony. Whispers surrounded them, mocking the second branch for not even being able to scrape together $30 million, proving they were truly a setting sun. Xiaoxi listened to the harsh gossip, worriedly gripping Huo Xingzhou's hand, using her eyes to comfort him that it was the thought that counted. But Huo Xingzhou wasn't upset at all. In fact, he was in a great mood. The real show was just beginning. However, Huo Xingzhou couldn't take it. She stood up abruptly, angrily condemning her grandfather for being biased, and stormed off toward the restroom. Worried, Xiaoxi exchanged a glance with Huo Xingzhou and hurried after her. In the dimly lit, shadowed corridors of the auction house, Xiaoxi temporarily lost sight of Zijiao. While trying to read a sign, urgent footsteps approached from behind. Zhao Yuzhen ran up, panting. Looking at this familiar yet alien face, Xiaoxi felt an incredibly complex mix of emotions. She coldly asked what she wanted. Zhao Yuzhen's eyes lingered greedily on the expensive bracelet on Xiaoxi's wrist. She gave a fake sigh of relief, claiming she was glad the second young master was treating her well. Xiaoxi's gaze remained icy and devoid of emotion, telling her to speak her mind and drop the fake mother-daughter act. Suppressing her anger, Zhao Yuzhen tried to persuade her patiently. You grew up in the country. You're not used to nice things. Wearing a $5 million bracelet is a waste on you. Why don't you trade with your sister? She's very competitive, and she's in a bad mood today. Xiaoxi stared at the woman in sheer disbelief. She never imagined she could be this shameless, not only showing blatant favoritism, but actively asking Xiaoxi to sacrifice herself for Su Weiwei. Seeing that the soft approach failed, Zhao Yuzhen resorted to emotional blackmail, claiming she suffered to give birth to her and was having a hard time as a stepmother. She aggressively demanded to know if Xiaoxi was going to hand it over or not. Just then, Huo Zijiao shot out like a firecracker, stepping right in front of Xiaoxi. She screamed at Zhao Yuzhen, calling her an old witch who treated a fake daughter like treasure while abusing her own flesh and blood. Do you really think that ungrateful wretch is going to take care of you in your old age? Zhao Yuzhen was trembling with rage, pointing a shaking finger at Huo Zijiao. But Zijiao didn't flinch, stating bluntly that she was cursing a heartless animal. Unwilling to engage further, Xiaoxi pulled Huo Zijiao away. As she passed Zhao Yuzhen, she lowered her voice and left a deeply loaded remark. I hear you're trying for a son. You'll regret treating me like this. In the shadows of a corner, a refined, steady, middle-aged man had watched the entire scene unfold. Thoughtfully, he asked the person beside him if that young girl looked familiar. His companion looked closely, shook his head, and suggested she might vaguely resemble his cousin. The middle-aged man smiled and dismissed it, thinking she looked more like a young huimin. But then he figured the world was big and lookalikes were common, so he didn't dwell on it. When Qiao Si and Huo Xijiao returned to their seats, the auction was wrapping up. Beside Huo Xingzhou sat an exquisite velvet box, clearly the item he had just won. Meanwhile, Huo Beiting proudly showed off the pines and cranes painting while enjoying endless praise. Convinced he would be named heir at the old master's birthday banquet, he was already acting like the future head of the Ho family. He didn't forget to step on Huo Xingzhou one last time, mocking the crippled loser who couldn't even function as a real man. Suddenly, a commotion erupted at the entrance of the auction hall. It turned out the master antiquities appraiser, Elder Qi, had arrived in person. The crowd gasped. Any antique authenticated by Elder Qi instantly skyrocketed in value. Word was he had participated in appraising this very painting. Listening to the chatter, a barely noticeable icy glint flashed in Huo Xingzhou's eyes. Before the crowd could process it, Qi Sanxi rushed through the throng with a grave expression, frantically asking if the pines and cranes painting had been sold. The guests immediately clamored to take credit, telling him that the first young master Huo had dropped $35 million without blinking, praising his unparalleled filial piety. Huo Beiting puffed his chest out proudly, while Su Weiwei clung to his arm, mockingly pointing out that the stingy second branch had only bought some nameless piece of junk. Qi Sanxi didn't have time for the flattery. He anxiously demanded to see the painting. Smug as ever, Huo Beiting handed over the luxurious box, generously telling the master to take his time admiring it. Qi Sanxi quickly put on his reading glasses. With trembling hands, he unrolled the scroll, his face practically pressed against the paper, meticulously examining every inch. Qiao Xi watched from the side. Huo Xingzhou keenly noticed her elevated mood. Clearly, the good show is about to start. Suddenly, Qi Sanxi slammed his hand heavily against the table, letting out two anguished cries. Fake! The smile on Huo Beiting's face instantly froze. A terrible premonition surged in his chest. Before he could even ask why, Qi Sanxi sighed in utter devastation, pronouncing sentence word by word. The paper and ink are authentic, but the painting is a later forgery. The technique is so brilliant it nearly fooled me. But if you smell closely, you can catch the scent of fresh ink hidden beneath the artificial aging process. The crowd swarmed forward. Upon smelling it, they indeed found the flaw, sighing that such an extinct masterpiece couldn't possibly be real. Huo Beiting felt as if a bucket of ice water had been dumped over his head. His body went rigid. He absolutely could not believe his ears. Su Weiwei stepped forward to pat his back, but he violently shoved her away, the veins in his neck bulging as he roared at her to shut up. Qi Sanxi sighed repeatedly, saying it was a massive pity. If he had arrived a step earlier, this wouldn't have happened. But rules were rules. Once the hammer fell, there were no refunds. Huo Beiting's $35 million had been completely thrown into the ocean, and he was about to become the city's biggest laughingstock. He had been so glorious moments ago, and now he was utterly humiliated. Just then, Huo Xingzhou began to clap slowly. He mocked his cousin, saying that no one could match the $35 million he spent on his filial piety. The painting might be fake, but the sentiment was real. Huo Beiting was so consumed by rage that a metallic taste of blood rushed up his throat. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed straight to the floor, terrifying Su Weiwei into screaming for an ambulance. Qiao Xi secretly glanced at Huo Xingzhou. Did Mr. Huo see through the whole thing from the beginning? But Huo Xingzhou simply took her hand, calmly turned around, and led her home. Outside the auction house, Huo Xingzhou had the driver take Xijiao home separately. The young girl pouted, but smartly decided not to interrupt the couple's sweet time. In the car, Qiao Xi sat beside him, her mind still racing. The events of the day had been a roller coaster. Huo Xingzhou casually turned to look at her. After a long moment, Qiao Xi softly murmured that she thought he was a little bad today. The corners of the man's mouth turned up. What makes you say that? Qiao Xi revealed her deduction. He gave up too easily, he was too calm in the face of insult, and most importantly, the Mr. Ho she knew would never blow tens of millions just for vanity. She knew he preferred doing real charity. That was the true baseline of a noble heir. Huo Xingzhou hadn't expected this young girl, whom he hadn't known for long, to see right through to his core, while his so-called family remained clueless. He placed the red velvet box on her lap as a reward. Opening it, Qiao Xi saw a custom massage tool set hand crafted by Master Lu Kunshan. It was incredibly rare. She wanted to refuse, but she loved it too much. Her conflicted little face was too adorable. Huo Xingzhou's eyes filled with a smile as he smoothly excused it by saying it would be deducted from her consultation fee. Qiaoxi immediately beamed, praising him for being so wonderful. The smile in the man's deep eyes deepened. Since she knew he was wonderful, she'd better treat him wonderfully from now on. Soon they arrived back at the Huo villa. The living room was brightly lit. Huo Jiancheng was massaging Du Huan's shoulders, telling her not to be angry. Qiaoxi awkwardly called them father and mother. The term still felt strange on her tongue. Huo Xingzhou was also surprised by his parents' arrival. Just as they finished greetings, Du Huan pulled a long face and ordered Aunt Qian to bring something out. Trembling, Aunt Qian produced a clear plastic bag and reported that she had swept it out from under the young master's bed while cleaning. The blue pills inside were glaringly obvious. Huo Xingzhou took one look. It was the stamina enhancement pills Zhou Yu had left behind. He couldn't believe they were still there. Du Huan shook her head, looking utterly disappointed. She bluntly stated that if Huo Jiancheng was taking them, fine, but how could her usually proud son resort to using them? Pointing at his nose, she lectured him. He was still so young, why was he rushing things? Besides, he had sworn he would keep Qiaoxi as a celibate wife. How did he slap his own face so quickly? Huo Jiancheng blushed furiously, begging his wife to leave him some dignity and not drag him into the crossfire while lecturing the kids. Du Huan wasn't having it. She shoved his face away and told him to shut up. Then, she earnestly advised her son. While she understood newlyweds were eager, the doctor had stressed the need for him to rest and recover. They had plenty of time in the future. Listening to this, Qiaoxi's ears burned. She finally realized those capsules were heavy-duty aphrodisiacs. She hadn't realized that the usually aloof Mr. Huo cared so deeply about his male pride in private. With a dark face, he squeezed out a defense through his teeth, swearing they absolutely weren't his. Du Huan laughed in pure anger, putting her hands on her hips. So what? Did that rascal Zhou Yu specifically drop them in your room just to frame you? Seeing the explosive atmosphere in the living room, Qiaoxi swallowed hard and nervously tried to smooth things over, weakly guaranteeing that Huo Xingzhou definitely hadn't taken them. Du Huan looked at Qiaoxi suspiciously, but after hearing that Zhou Yu had indeed visited recently, she half believed them and put the contraband away. Since he hadn't taken them, she confiscated them permanently. Then she waved her hand, telling Huo Jiancheng to quickly take their son upstairs to rest, claiming she had some private woman talk to share with Qiaoxi. Huo Jiancheng practically bolted for the elevator with his son's wheelchair, terrified of being caught in the crossfire again, leaving the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law alone. I know you've been wronged, but this can't be rushed. Once his body is fully recovered, then you two can really enjoy yourselves. Qiaoxi blinked her big eyes, utterly confused as she looked at Du Huan, who was making a heart shape with her hands and giving her a very suggestive look. Qiaoxi finally caught on, waving her hands frantically in denial. But Aunt Qian, smiling ear to ear, completely shattered the illusion. She joked that the night the young madam got drunk, she was incredibly passionate. The red marks on the young master's neck couldn't even be covered by a popped collar shirt. Qiaoxi was completely stunned, her face blushing so hard it looked like it might bleed. A few fragmented memories flashed in her mind. Was everything from that drunken night real? The heat traveled from the tips of her ears down to her heels. She wanted to find a crack in the floor and hide. Qiaoxi, you absolute idiot. Du Huan held her hand, softly comforting her, saying they were all experienced adults here, and Xingzhou probably just wanted to recover quickly. Aunt Qian looked forward to the future, dreaming that once the doctor cured the young master, having 2 kids in 3 years wouldn't be a dream. Upstairs, outside the bedroom door, Qiaoxi paced hesitantly, her mind a mess, having no idea how to explain her absurd drunken behavior. Suddenly, the man's deep voice came through the door, teasing her if she was planning to trample all the ants outside to death. Startled, Qiaoxi resigned herself and pushed the door open, muttering that there were no ants in the house. Huo Xingzhou's gaze swept over her casually, while Qiaoxi's eyes involuntarily landed on his neck. The red marks had faded significantly. Catching her look, Huo Xingzhou raised an eyebrow and asked why she was blushing. Biting her lip, Qiaoxi stammered out a mention of the night she was drunk. Huo Xingzhou instantly understood. The little doctor was stressing over the origin of his subcutaneous bruising. Completely flustered, Qiaoxi confessed that she blacked out when she drank. Huo Xingzhou asked if she was afraid he had taken advantage of her. Qiaoxi frantically waved her hands. She was terrified she had done something completely out of line and made him uncomfortable. To her surprise, a genuine smile filled Huo Xingzhou's sharp eyes. He downplayed the entire intimate encounter, calling it just crazy drunk behavior, and said it was a small accident he didn't care about. Seeing her look so deeply ashamed, he couldn't bear to tease her anymore. Xiaoxi carefully confirmed, was it really just drunk behavior? Huo Xingzhou gave her a half-smile, joking, "What, did you think you actually forced yourself on me?" He reminded her they had signed an agreement and told her to stop overthinking. Hearing this, a massive weight lifted off Xiaoxi's shoulders, and a smile finally bloomed on her face. Since Mr. Huo didn't care, she didn't need to stress over it. The smile in his eyes faded slightly as he casually asked about her alcohol tolerance. Xiaoxi explained there were a lot of medicinal wines for energy in the countryside, promising to let him try some one day. After saying goodnight, Xiaoxi practically skipped out of the master bedroom. Huo Xingzhou watched the door and let out a soft laugh. He had always valued his life and boundaries. Why was it that with her, he simply couldn't bring himself to give her a hard time? Meanwhile, late at night in a VIP ward at Sea City First People's Hospital, Huo Beiting was acting like an enraged lion, smashing everything in sight. Su Weiwei hid in a corner, shivering in fear. The floor was a disaster zone. Huo Beiting roared about the $35 million going down the drain, screaming that Huo Xingzhou, a cripple, dared to laugh at him. With a trembling voice, Su Weiwei tried to comfort him, pointing out that at least the jade bracelet was real. But Huo Beiting suddenly charged at her, violently ripping the floating flower jade bracelet off her wrist and smashing it to the floor. His face was twisted with rage as he interrogated her. Was she secretly laughing at him too? Terrified out of her wits, Su Weiwei frantically denied it. Suddenly, the ward door was pushed open. Huo Jianjun stood there with a dark face, furious at his son's pathetic display. Huo Jianjun gave Su Weiwei a dark look, signaling her to leave. Feeling like she'd been granted amnesty, she scrambled out of the danger zone. Huo Jianjun frowned deeply, harshly reprimanding his son. How could he lose his composure over a mere 35 million? The patriarch was already furious. Once he inherited the Huo Corporation, there would be countless 35 millions for him to spend. Huo Beiting's handsome face twisted with jealousy. Gritting his teeth, he yelled that this was all Huo Xingzhou's conspiracy, convinced the cripple knew the painting was a fake. Fueled by malice, he regretted that the car accident hadn't sent his cousin straight to hell, leaving him alive to be a thorn in his side. Before he could finish, a resounding slap struck his face. Huo Jianjun's face was livid as he ordered him to shut up. That was an absolute taboo topic. 5 bright red finger marks appeared on Huo Beiting's cheek. But he still stuck his neck out, refusing to back down, insisting Huo Xingzhou had set him up to lose face. Huo Jianjun let out a cold laugh, looking at his son like he was an idiot. He ruthlessly broke it down. Even the top experts had been fooled. How could that cripple have known? To Huo Jianjun, Huo Xingzhou was no longer a threat. With the path to power already cleared for his son, Huo Beiting finally calmed down and urgently asked how they would resolve the situation. A shrewd look flashed in Huo Jianjun's eyes as he laid out a PR strategy. Tomorrow, they would openly donate $50 million to a charity and use the media to build massive hype. They needed to establish the image of a wealthy heir who viewed money as dirt, entirely washing away the negative press of looking petty. Huo Beiting finally felt relieved, nodding heavily in understanding. Then, Huo Jianjun's tone shifted. He brought up Su Weiwei with utter disdain, warning his son that she was only good for a casual fling. With her unpresentable background and stepmother, marrying into the Huo family was nothing but a pipe dream. A playful smirk appeared on Huo Beiting's face. He knew exactly what he was doing. He had never genuinely cared about her. He was just keeping her around because she was still somewhat useful. Seeing his son catch on, Huo Jianjun's anger vanished. His expression turned cold as a murderous intent surfaced. He ordered that Dr. Zhuo increase the dosage. They absolutely could not let Huo Xingzhou drag out his pathetic existence in this world much longer. Huo Beiting's eyes clouded with dark malice as he agreed. Even if his father hadn't mentioned it, he was already preparing to send his dear cousin off on his final journey. That day, Zhuofeng arrived as usual to treat Huo Xingzhou's legs. Aunt Qian greeted him with a big smile, hesitating for a moment before leaning in to probe. Dr. Zhuo, can our young master's hidden issue be cured? Young people are fiery as newlyweds. Who would have thought he was secretly taking heavy stamina-enhancing pills behind our backs? Zhuofeng was thrilled internally. The more he eats, the better. Taking too many of those aggressive pills is a death sentence. But on the surface, he adjusted his glasses and offered a warm reassurance. As long as his legs heal, that area will naturally recover too. Aunt Qian sighed in relief. That puts my mind at ease. She then secretly side-eyed Zhuo Feng. Although she couldn't understand why her master wanted her to intentionally leak the secret about the pills, following orders was always the right move. The next day, Zhuo Feng opened his medical kit. With an undeniable, confident tone, he declared, "The second young master's physical foundation is recovering well. Today, we need to change the medicinal bath formula." He pulled out a stack of prepackaged herbs. "I specifically adjusted this to be an intensified version. It's incredibly potent." Last night, after getting an urgent call from the first young master, Zhuo Feng had stayed up adding heavy doses of lethal ingredients to the formula. He guaranteed that after soaking in this for a week, Huo Xingzhou's body would completely collapse. Qiaoxi stepped forward to take the herbs, but Zhuo Feng quickly pulled his hand back, blocking her with a fake smile. "I won't trouble the young madam with rough work like this. Today, I must stay here personally to observe the effects of the medicine." Qiaoxi's heart clenched. This old fox is refusing to leave. Flustered, she looked at Huo Xingzhou. The man gave her an almost imperceptible nod. Zhuo Feng poured the powder into the wooden tub. Instantly, a pungent smell filled the room. One sniff and Qiaoxi knew something was terribly wrong. The scent was distinctly laced with highly toxic substances. Panicking, she used the excuse of helping Huo Xingzhou to lean close to his ear, whispering urgently, "Mr. Huo, you absolutely cannot soak in this." But Huo Xingzhou grabbed her hand, his thumb gently rubbing her palm to soothe her. "Help me in. If I don't act as the bait, how will we make them completely lower their guard?" Biting her lower lip, Qiaoxi reluctantly helped him into the tub. Zhuo Feng sat to the side, flipping through a medical text while constantly shooting scrutinizing glances at Huo Xingzhou. Pretending she needed to add more water, Qiaoxi bent over, getting close to him again, her voice trembling. "Mr. Huo, this powder is really poisonous." The man leaned in, mimicking her posture. His thin lips were almost touching her cheek, his warm breath fanning across her skin. "Can you cure it?" Qiaoxi nodded with absolute certainty. A smile flashed in his eyes. "Since you say you can, then I'm trusting you with my life." Qiaoxi was so anxious her eyes turned red. This was gambling with his life. "But if you soak in this, the toxins will enter your body and cause massive damage. All the progress we've made will be wiped out." "Don't worry, I'll control the time." Suddenly, a spark of inspiration hit Qiaoxi. "Mr. Huo, I have an emergency plan." Before he could even process what she meant, a warm, soft sensation clumsily pressed against his lips. She was inexperienced, like a frightened little animal. Rather than a kiss, it was more like frantic, uncoordinated nibbling. Huo Xingzhou froze, then quickly took control. A low chuckle escaped from between their lips. "Qiaoxi, that's not how you kiss. I'll teach you." His large hand firmly cupped the back of her head, deepening the kiss into something incredibly intense and lingering, almost as if he were savoring a long-awaited delicacy. The deeply ambiguous sounds of their kiss echoed through the room, making Dr. Zhou, the watcher, turn red in his old face. He hadn't expected Huo Xingzhou's body to be failing, yet his lust to remain so restless. Reluctantly breaking the kiss, Huo Xingzhou looked over at Zhuo Feng, his eyes carrying an undeniable air of arrogant charm. "I apologize, Dr. Zhuo. As newlyweds, we sometimes just can't control ourselves." Zhuo Feng let out a cold snort, slamming his medical book shut. Grabbing his kit, he snapped, "The second young master is clearly in high spirits. Please suit yourselves." Aunt Qian instantly read the room and escorted the doctor out. Zhuo Feng mentally cursed them for being shameless in broad daylight. But whatever, he thought. Soaking in a poison bath while engaging in debauchery? That kind of reckless behavior will only kill him faster. The moment the door clicked shut, Huo Xingzhou stood up rapidly and threw his clothes on. Blushing furiously, Qiaoxi clumsily helped him back into the wheelchair. Adjusting his collar, the man teased, "The little divine doctor's emergency plan was incredibly effective." Qiaoxi was so embarrassed she wanted to dig a hole and bury herself. "Please stop talking about it. It's so humiliating." She immediately crouched down and began seriously massaging the pressure points on his legs to flush out the toxins. As her fingers touched his firm muscles, she suddenly, without warning, began to cry. A crystal-clear tear rolled down her cheek, landing on his leg with a soft pat. Huo Xingzhou's movements paused. He reached down, lifting her chin with a finger, gently wiping away the wetness. "What's wrong?"